Imagine a world where gods and titans shape history not with thunderous battles, but through the quiet grind of planning, crafting, and record-keeping. From Gaia's secret councils to end a tyrant's reign, to the Trojan Horse's deceptive, blueprints to Oceanus trade routes binding ancient shores, the boring History for Sleep series unveils the unsung routines behind Greek mythology's greatest tales. Each story, rooted in Hesiod's myths and Bronze Age realities, takes you to groves, forges, and ports where the mundane meetings, maps, and maritime logistics builds empires and preserves cultures. Let these soothing narratives of gods, like Themis, Dikê, and Mnemosyne and their mortal echoes, lull you into a restful sleep while revealing how small tasks shape epic legacies. The Reverent Titan Uprising. Strategies against the old order. Imagine yourself wandering the mist-shrouded slopes of ancient Mount Orthres, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of pine and earth, and a distant rumble of thunder echoes not from storms but from the stirrings of divine discontent in the quiet annals of Greek mythology, as preserved in Hesiod's Theogony from the 8th to 7th century BC. The Titans, those primordial beings born of Uranus sky and Gaia earth, embarked on what we might call a reverent uprising. It wasn't a chaotic frenzy, but a calculated strategy rooted in familial duty and cosmic necessity, unfolding with the slow deliberation of bureaucratic planning in an eternal realm. You stand there, feeling the weight of generations as the Titans, 12 in number, contemplated their father's tyrannical rule. Uranus, fearing his children's power, had confined them within Gaia's womb. A metaphor perhaps for the stifling control over natural forces that ancient Greeks saw in their myths. Hesiod details this with a detached precision. The Titans included Oceanus, the encircling river; Cous, embodiment of intellect; Crius, the mysterious southern pillar; Hyperion, the watchful light; Iapetus, ancestor of mortality; Thea, the shining one; Rhea, the flowing mother; Themis, divine law; Mnemosyne, memory; Phoebe, prophetic brightness; Tethys, nurturing waters; and Cronus, the youngest yet boldest. Each held domains that mirrored everyday aspects of the world, rivers for trade routes, memory for oral traditions, law for societal order, making their uprising not just a rebellion, but a restructuring of the universe's daily operations. Gaia, weary of her husband's oppression, urged her children to act with reverence, honoring the natural balance even as they sought change. You can picture the hushed gatherings in cavernous halls, where strategies were whispered over maps of the heavens, drawn in starlight on stone tablets. Cronus, chosen for his cunning, took the lead, armed with a sickle forged by Gaia adamant, and unyielding, symbolizing the unbreaking will of earth. The plan unfolded methodically. The Titans didn't rush, they waited for the opportune moment, respecting the cycles of day and night that Hyperion oversaw. As Uranus descended to unite with Gaia each evening, a routine as predictable as the tides Oceanus controlled, Cronus hid in ambush. The act itself was swift but laden with symbolic weight, castration, severing the sky's dominance, allowing creation to flourish unchecked. Blood from the wound birthed new entities, the Renes for vengeance, giants for strength, and Aphrodite from sea foam, illustrating how even violent shifts birthed everyday beauties. Like love and justice. In the aftermath, the Titans divided the world with administrative efficiency. Cronus assumed the throne, marrying Rhea, and ushering in the golden age where humans lived without toil, fields yielded without plowing, and no laws were needed because harmony prevailed. You might envision daily life under this regime. Titans like Themis advising on equitable distributions of resources, Mnemosyne preserving ancestral knowledge through rhythmic chants, and Tethys managing the freshwater springs that sustained villages. Yet this reverence for order carried seeds of irony. Cronus, haunted by a prophecy from Uranus and Gaia that his own child would overthrow him, swallowed his offspring Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon each time Rhea gave birth. It was a grim routine, blending paternal fear with cosmic strategy, echoing the very tyranny he had ended. Historical interpretations suggest this myth reflected real cultural shifts in ancient Greece around 1000 to 1100 BC, possibly invasions where New Indo-European peoples imposed Olympian worship over older chthonic deities, with the Titans representing indigenous earth gods. The uprising, then, wasn't mere fable but a narrative veil for societal transitions, where strategies involved not just battles, but integrations of old and new customs. Lesser-known details reveal Crius' obscure role, perhaps as a constable of the south, overseeing stellar alignments for navigation, or Iapetus linked to human lifespan, influencing funerary rites. You feel the tedium of eternal vigilance, the Titan's days filled with monitoring the cosmos' balance, ensuring rivers flowed and memories endured. But as Cronus' paranoia grew, swallowing gods like routine meals, one wonders, how long could such a reverent order hold before the cycle repeated itself? As you linger on the slopes of Mount Orthres, the air now carries a faint sweetness, a memory of the golden age under Cronus' rule, where the earth, as Hesiod recounts in Works and Days, circa 700 BC, bore fruit without human toil. Picture yourself in a sunlit vale where mortals and titans coexist, not in splendor but in a quiet rhythm of existence, governed by routines so steady they feel eternal. The Titans' uprising, detailed in Section 1, had toppled Uranus' tyranny, and now Cronus presided over a cosmos ordered with the precision of a village elder's ledger. Each Titan took on roles that mirrored the daily needs of ancient Greek society. Oceanus ensured rivers supported trade, Themis codified unwritten laws for communal disputes, and Mnemosyne's chants preserved genealogies that bound tribes together. You can almost hear the soft hum of their work, like a bureaucracy of gods managing the universe's pulse. Cronus, now king, ruled with Rhea, whose maternal presence softened the edges of his sickle-one throne. Their court wasn't a glittering palace, but a series of natural sanctuaries, groves, springs, caves where titans convened to maintain balance. Historical evidence from Mycenaean Lineae tablets circa 1400 to 1200 BC suggests early Greeks revered deities tied to natural forces, and the titans' roles reflect this, their divine duties echoing the practical concerns of farmers and sailors. Tethys, for instance, oversaw freshwater distribution, critical for Bronze Age settlements, reliant on springs. Hyperion's daily task of tracking the sun's arcaded navigators, while Cuus, less heralded, pondered celestial alignments, perhaps inspiring early astronomical records found in later Greek texts. Yet, beneath this harmony, Cronus' paranoia festered. You sense the tension in Rhea's weary glances as she birthed gods Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, only to see them swallowed by her husband, driven by the prophecy of his own downfall. This wasn't mere myth but a reflection of real-world anxieties. Ancient rulers often feared succession crises, as seen in Hittite and Egyptian records of the same era where kings eliminated rivals. Cronus' methodical consumption was a grim ritual, performed with the same deliberation as his rebellion against Uranus. Each act reinforced his control but strained the Titans' unity. Themis, goddess of divine law, likely frowned at this violation of natural order, while Mnemosyne's memory held the bitter irony of their father's tyranny reborn. The Golden Age's daily life, meanwhile, thrived in its simplicity. Humans, Hesiod writes, lived like gods, free from sorrow there. Days filled with feasts from unplowed fields and communal gatherings under starlit skies. Archaeological finds from Minoan Crete circa 1000 BC suggest such prosperity. Granaries overflowed, and trade flourished without the need for fortified walls. The Titans facilitated this, their divine oversight ensuring rivers flowed and seasons turned. But the cracks were forming. Rhea's grief grew with each child lost, and whispers among the Titans, perhaps Crius in the south or Iapetus, tied to mortal lifespans, hinted at unrest. You can imagine their debates in shadowed groves, weighing loyalty to Cronus against the prophecy's weight. This fragile order raises a question. Could Rhea, the nurturing mother, find a way to subvert Cronus' paranoia without shattering the Golden Age's delicate balance? You stand now in a hidden glade on Crete, where the air is thick with the scent of wild thyme and the distant bleat of goats, as Rhea, the Titan mother, orchestrates the final act of the reverent uprising saga. The Golden Age, described in Section 2, teetered under Cronus' paranoia, his routine devouring of their children a grim echo of Uranus oppression. But Rhea, whose name means flow, moved like a river finding its course, home eternal resolve reshaping the cosmos. Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC tells of her cunning. When pregnant with Zeus, her sixth child, she devised a plan to save him, a strategy as meticulous as the Titans' earlier rebellion. You can picture her, cloaked in moonlight, rapping, a stone in swaddling clothes, her hands steady despite her grief, preparing to deceive the god king. Rhea's plan unfolded with quiet precision. She gave birth in a Cretan cave, sacred to later Greeks as the Diktean cave, where archaeological evidence from the Minoan period circa 2000 to 1400 BC shows votive offerings to mother goddesses, suggesting Rhea's cult had real-world roots. She entrusted Zeus to the nymphs Amalthea and Adrastea, who hid him in the rugged hills, feeding him goat's milk and honey. The stone, presented to Cronus, was swallowed without question, a testament to his blind routine. The Curetes, warrior priests, clashed their spears and shouted to mask Zeus' cries, their rhythmic din blending with Crete's nightly sounds. This wasn't divine drama, but a practical conspiracy rooted in the survival tactics of a mother, protecting her child. Much like mortal women in ancient Greece safeguarded families during invasions or famines. Zeus grew in secret, raised on tales of Titan rule and Cronus' betrayal. When he returned, now a young god, he allied with Rhea to force Cronus to regurgitate his siblings. The Titans' unity crumbled as Zeus, aided by the Cyclops and Hundred-Handed, once freed from Tartarus where Cronus had imprisoned them, waged the Titanomachy, a decade-long war. This conflict, detailed in Hesiod, wasn't just divine but mirrored earthly power struggles. Like the Mycenaean collapse circa 1200 BC, where new elites overthrew old orders, Zeus' victory established the Olympian reign, banishing most Titans. To Tartarus, those some, like Themis and Mnemosyne, joined him. Their roles as lore and memory enduring in Greek culture. The resolution reshaped history. The Olympian order introduced new rituals, sacrifices, temples, oracles that defined classical Greece, seen in sites like Delphi. Yet, the Titans' legacy lingered in daily life. Oceanus rivers still guided trade, Hyperion's light inspired, astronomers and Rhea's maternal archetype influenced goddess worship. The uprising's lesson is clear. Even revered orders fall when fear overrides balance. Today, this echoes in how societies navigate change, balancing tradition with progress, as seen in modern debates over governance or resource management. The Titan story, born of mundane strategies and human-like flaws, reminds you that history turns on quiet acts of resilience, like a mother's deception in a Cretan cave. Reflecting on this, one wonders, how do the small, deliberate choices of today's unsung figures shape the upheavals of tomorrow? Cronus' golden age. Administrative details of a peaceful area. You find yourself standing in a sun-dappled meadow of ancient Greece, where the air hums with the gentle buzz of bees and the earth yields barley without applause. Touch! This is the golden age, as described by Hesiod in Works and Days circa 700 BC. A time under Cronus' rule when mortals lived like gods, free from toil or sorrow. After the Titans' uprising against Uranus, detailed in Story 1, Cronus established a cosmic administration that felt less like divine decree and more like the meticulous record-keeping of a village council. You can imagine the Titans, those primordial giants, not as warriors now, but as stewards of a world where harmony was maintained through routine, almost bureaucratic precision. Cronus, the sickle-wielding king, sat at the center of this order, his throne not a gilded seat but a rocky outcrop on Mount Orthres, where he oversaw the Titans' roles. Each Titan managed an aspect of existence critical to both gods and mortals. Oceanus, the river god, in short waterways flowed predictably, vital for the trade routes later evidenced in Minoan artifacts circa 2000 BC. Tethys, his consort, regulated freshwater springs, a lifeline for early settlements. Themis, goddess of divine law, formalized customs into oral codes. ensuring disputes over grazing lands or harvests were settled without strife. You can picture her, stern yet fair, mediating under an oak tree as villagers nodded in agreement. Mnemosyne, memory's keeper, preserved genealogies through rhythmic chants, a practice echoed in Homeric oral traditions, binding communities to their past. The Golden Age's daily life was defined by abundance without effort. Hesiod describes fields that bore crops spontaneously, a poetic reflection of fertile regions like Themis maneuver that supported early Greek farmers. Archaeological records from the Bronze Age circa 2000 to 1200 BC show granaries filled without extensive labor, suggesting a cultural memory of prosperity. Mortals feasted under open skies, their days free of war or want, while titans like Hyperion tracked the sun's path, aiding shepherds with predictable daylight. Even Crius, the obscure southern titan, may have monitored constellations for seasonal cues, a precursor to later Greek astronomical tables. Cronus himself was no idle ruler. His administration required constant vigilance, ensuring the Titan's domains aligned with the cosmos rhythm. You might envision him consulting with Cuus, the intellectual Titan, over star charts to predict rains, or with Iapetus, whose link to mortality shaped burial customs that honored the dead, without fear. Yet, this idyllic era had a shadow, Cronus. Fear of prophecy that his child would overthrow him cast a pall over his rule. Each time Rhea bore a child, he swallowed it, a grim routine that contrasted with the era's peace. This act, noted in Theogony, mirrored real-world anxieties of succession, seen in ancient Near Eastern texts where kings secured thrones through ruthless means. The Golden Age's stability, then, rested on a paradox, a ruler who ensured mortal ease but harbored divine dread. As you stand in this meadow, you wonder, how did the Titans maintain such harmony, while their king's actions sowed the seeds of discord? You're now walking through a bustling Greek village of the Golden Age, where the scent of freshly baked bread mingles with the tang of olive oil, and no one locks their doors. Hesiod's works and days paints this era as a time when mortals dined without worry, their lives sustained by an earth that gave freely. Yet this effortless abundance, under Cronus' rule, relied on a hidden machinery of Titan oversight, a divine bureaucracy that ensured the cosmos ran like a well-tended farm. The Titans, as you learned in Section 1, were not just gods but administrators, their daily tasks weaving the fabric of a world where toil was unknown. Yet their efforts were as mundane as a scribe's tallies. Oceanus and Tethys formed the backbone of this system. Oceanus rivers, encircling the world, facilitated trade without the conflicts later seen in Mycenaean records circa 1400 BC. Tethys springs watered fields, their flow so reliable that irrigation ditches, common in later eras, were unnecessary. You can imagine villagers dipping clay pots into clear streams, unaware of the Titan's coordination behind the scenes. Themis' role was equally vital. Her divine laws, unwritten but universally understood, governed resource sharing. Archaeological evidence from Minoan Crete shows communal storage systems, suggesting a cultural memory of such equitable distribution. Themis likely presided over gatherings where disputes over a stray goat or a shared harvest were settled, with calm arbitration, her presence ensuring trust. Mnemosyne's work was subtler, but no less critical. As the Titan of memory, she preserved the oral traditions that defined tribal identities, her chants echoing in the songs of elders at communal feasts. This practice, rooted in pre-literate Greek culture, ensured continuity without written records. Hyperion, meanwhile, tracked the sun's daily arc, his observations guiding herders and fishers. His sister Thea, associated with light, may have inspired the reflective materials like polished bronze used in early Greek crafts as seen in Cycladic artifacts. Even Iapetus, linked to mortality, influenced rituals that honored the dead, with simple offerings of grain and wine, practices later formalized in Greek funerary rites. Cronus oversaw this harmony with a farmer's diligence, his rule a balance of authority and routine. Yet, his paranoia gnawed at the edges. Each child Rhea bore Hestia. Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon were swallowed in a chillingly methodical act, documented in Theogony. You might picture Rhea's silent anguish as she handed over each infant, the titans around her exchanging uneasy glances. This wasn't just a personal tragedy, but a cosmic flaw. Threatening the order they maintained, Themis, bound by justice, must have questioned Cronus' actions, while Cuus, the thinker, perhaps foresaw the instability. The Golden Age's abundance, so carefully curated, felt fragile under this shadow. The Titans' daily grind, monitoring rivers, chanting histories, tracking stars, kept the world spinning smoothly. But for how long? As you linger in this village, watching mortals feast without fear, you wonder, could such a system endure when its ruler's fear undermined the very harmony he sought to preserve? You stand now in a hidden glade on Crete, where the air is thick with the scent of wild thyme and the distant bleat of goats, as Rhea, the Titan mother, orchestrates the final act of the reverent uprising saga. The Golden Age, described in Section 2, teetered under Cronus' paranoia, his routine devouring of their children a grim echo of Uranus oppression. But Rhea, whose name means flow, moved like a river finding its course, her maternal resolve reshaping the cosmos. Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC tells of her cunning. When pregnant with Zeus, her sixth child, she devised a plan to save him, a strategy as meticulous as the Titans' earlier rebellion. You can picture her, cloaked in moonlight, rapping, a stone in swaddling clothes, her hands steady despite her grief, preparing to deceive the god-king. Rhea's plan unfolded with quiet precision. She gave birth in a Cretan cave, sacred to later Greeks as the Dictaean Cave, where archaeological evidence from the Minoan period circa 2000 to 1400 BC shows votive offerings to mother goddesses, suggesting Rhea's cult had real-world roots. She entrusted Zeus to the nymphs Amalthea and Adrastea, who hid him in the rugged hills, feeding him goat's milk and honey. The stone, presented to Cronus, was swallowed without question, a testament to his blind routine. The Curetes, warrior priests, clashed their spears and shouted to mask Zeus' cries, their rhythmic din blending with Crete's nightly sounds. This wasn't divine drama, but a practical conspiracy, rooted in the survival tactics of a mother protecting her child. Much like mortal women in ancient Greece safeguarded families during invasions or famines. Zeus grew in secret, raised on tales of Titan rule and Cronus betrayal. When he returned, now a young god, he allied with Rhea to force Cronus to regurgitate his siblings. The Titans' unity crumbled as Zeus, aided by the Cyclops and hundred-handed ones freed from Tartarus, where Cronus had imprisoned them, waged the Titanomachy, a decade-long war. This conflict, detailed in Hesiod, wasn't just divine but mirrored earthly power struggles, like the Mycenaean collapse circa 1200 BC, where new elites overthrew old orders. Zeus' victory established the Olympian reign, banishing most Titans to Tartarus, though some, like Themis and Mnemosyne, joined him, their roles as lore and memory enduring in Greek culture. The resolution reshaped history. The Olympian order introduced new rituals, sacrifices, temples, oracles that defined classical Greece, seen in sites like Delphi. Yet, the Titans' legacy lingered in daily life. Oceanus rivers still guided trade. Hyperion's light inspired astronomers, and Rhea's maternal archetype influenced goddess worship. The uprising's lesson is clear. Even revered orders fall when fear overrides balance. Today, this echoes in how societies navigate change, balancing tradition with progress, as seen in modern debates over governance or resource management. The Titan story, born of mundane strategies and human-like flaws, reminds you that history turns on quiet acts of resilience, like a mother's deception in a Cretan cave. Reflecting on this, one wonders, how do the small, deliberate choices of today's unsung figures shape the upheavals of tomorrow? Gaia's counsel, the hidden alliances of rebel Ione stand on the primal slopes of Mount Orthres, where the earth pulses beneath your feet, its scent rich with damp soil and ancient roots. This is the world of Gaia, the Earth Mother, whose counsel, as told in Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC, sparked the Titan rebellion against Uranus, the sky god. Far from a dramatic uprising, Gaia's role was one of quiet strategy, a divine matriarch weaving alliances as methodically as a village elder, planning a harvest. Her rebellion wasn't born of rage but of necessity, a response to Uranus' tyranny, which confined their Titan children within her womb, a mythic echo of stifled natural forces. Gaia, in Greek thought, was the foundation of all life, her body. The mountains, rivers, and plains that sustained early communities. You can picture her as both deity and landscape, her consciousness woven into the land's cycles. Her grievance was practical. Uranus' refusal to let their children Oceanus, Themis, Mnemosyne, Cronus, and others emerge disrupted the cosmic order. Much like droughts or quakes troubled Bronze Age Greeks circa 2000 BC, archaeological records from Mycenaean sites show reverence for earth deities, with clay figurines suggesting rituals to appease natural forces. Gaia's council began in secret, her voice a whisper in caverns where Titans gathered, their meetings as routine as tribal councils. Her strategy hinged on alliances. She first turned to her children, the 12 Titans, each embodying aspects of existence: Oceanus for rivers, Hyperion for light, Themis for law. Gaia's persuasion was subtle, emphasizing duty to the Earth's balance over personal ambition. She forged a sickle of adamant, a tool symbolizing unyielding resolve. Its creation a laborious task perhaps overseen by Cyclops, whose forges later appear in myth. You might imagine Gaia guiding Cronus, the youngest Titan, through starlit groves, her counsel blending maternal care with cosmic pragmatism. Cronus' role as the rebel leader was less about heroism and more about executing a plan. His ambush of Uranus timed to the sky god's nightly descent, a routine as predictable as the tides. These alliances extended beyond the Titans. Gaia likely consulted primordial beings like Erebus Darkness or Nyx Night, whose domains cloaked her plans, their obscurity a shield against Uranus' gaze. This mirrors real-world strategies in ancient Greece, where alliances between tribes or city-states, as seen in Lineaby tablets, were forged in secret to counter threats. Gaia's gatherings were not grand but intimate, held in Earth's hollows, where she outlined roles, tethys to ensure water sources for the rebellions, sustenance, kouos to calculate celestial timings. Every detail was deliberate, reflecting the Greeks' own meticulous planning in agriculture or trade. Yet, as Gaia's plan took shape, a question lingered in the damp air of those caverns. Could her carefully woven alliances hold against the unpredictable wrath of a sky god? You're now deep within a cavern beneath Mount Orthres, where the air is cool and the faint drip of water echoes like a heartbeat. Gaia, the Earth Mother, orchestrates her rebellion against Uranus with the precision of a farmer planning a season's crops, as described in Hesiod's Theogony. Section 1 revealed her whispered alliances with the Titans and primordial beings. Here, her council takes form in logistical details, the mundane machinery of a cosmic uprising. You sense the weight of her resolve, not in fiery speeches, but in the quiet allocation of tasks that ensured the rebellion's success. Gaia's strategy relied on the Titans' domains, each a cog in the rebellion's wheel. Oceanus, the river Titan, secured waterways to sustain the conspirators, his currents mirroring the trade routes that Minoan Crete circa 2000 BC relied on, as evidenced by unfortified ports. Tethys, his consort, managed springs, ensuring fresh water for gatherings in remote hideouts. You can envision Titans like Crius, obscure yet vital, tracking southern constellations to time the ambush, a practice akin to early Greek navigation. Themis, goddess of law, codified the rebellion's purpose, framing it as a restoration of cosmic balance. Her oral decrees binding the Titans like the unwritten codes of early Greek tribes. The sickle, Gaia's masterwork, was a logistical triumph, forged from adamant, a mythical metal symbolizing Earth's unyielding strength. Its creation likely involved Cyclopean smiths, their forges hidden in volcanic crags. This mirrors Bronze Age metalworking, where tools were crafted with communal effort. As seen in Mycenaean daggers, Gaia's instructions to Cronus were precise: wait for Uranus' nightly descent to unite with her. A routine as fixed as the stars. Hyperion watched. The ambush's timing required Kua's intellectual calculations. ensuring darkness perhaps aided by Nyx cloaked their movements. These preparations were as routine as a village preparing for a festival, yet their stakes were cosmic. Gaia's alliances extended to primordial forces. Erebus' darkness concealed meetings, while Nyx's night shielded Cronus' approach. This reflects real-world tactics, like those in Hittite records circa 1600 BC, where secrecy was key in rebellions. Gaia also ensured sustenance with Tethys. Springs and spontaneous harvests echoed in Hesiod's golden age, feeding the Titans. Archaeological finds from Knossos suggest such abundance, with granaries supporting communal efforts. Every detail, from star charts to water routes, was planned with the care of a steward managing a household. Yet, Gaia's meticulous plans faced a challenge. Uranus, though tyrannical, was a god of boundless power, his sky encompassing all. The Titans' unity, forged in secret, relied on trust, but Cronus' ambition hinted at future cracks. As you stand in this cavern, hearing Gaia's steady counsel, you wonder, could her alliances, so carefully built, withstand the chaos of the rebellion's execution? You stand now on a windswept ridge where the earth meets the sky, its hue still, bruised from the rebellion's climax. Gaia's counsel, detailed in Section 2, culminated in Cronus' ambush of Uranus as recounted in Hesiod's Theogony. The sickle's strike severing Uranus' dominance was swift, but its aftermath reshaped the cosmos with the quiet permanence of a river carving a valley. You feel the Earth's pulse, Gaia's triumph not in glory but in the restoration of balance, a victory rooted in the mundane alliances she wove. Cronus' act, guided by Gaia, was executed with precision. As Uranus descended, Cronus struck, his sickle cutting away the sky's tyranny. The blood-birthed new entities Erinyes, giants, Aphrodite, each tied to aspects of Greek life, vengeance, strength, love. This mirrors cultural shifts around 2000 to 1100 BC, when new Indo-European deities, like Zeus, overlaid old chthonic cults, as suggested by Linear B tablets. Gaia's role didn't end with the strike. She oversaw the Titans' division of power, with Oceanus managing rivers, Themis codifying laws, and Mnemosyne preserving the rebellion's story through chants, practices echoed in early Greek oral traditions. The logistics of victory were as crucial as the rebellion itself. Tethys in short springs flowed for new settlements, while Hyperion's solar tracking aided navigation in a reordered world. Archaeological evidence from Mycenaean sites shows increased trade post-upheaval, reflecting Oceanus' influence. Gaia's alliances with Nyx and Erebus faded into the background, their darkness no longer needed, but their secrecy set a precedent for later Greek mystery cults. The Titans' new order, the Golden Age, brought ease to mortals with fields, yielding without toil. A memory preserved in Hesiod's works and days and supported by Minoan granary finds. Yet, Gaia's triumph carried seeds of future strife. Cronus' paranoia, swallowing his children, echoed Uranus' tyranny. A cycle Gaia foresaw but couldn't prevent. Her counsel, rooted in balance, couldn't fully control her children's ambitions. This mirrors real-world transitions like the Mycenaean collapse circa 1200 BC, when new powers disrupted old systems. Gaia's legacy endured in Greek reverence for the earth seen in rituals at Delphi, and her story of alliances resonates today, where collective action drives change. From environmental movements to grassroots reforms. As you gaze across this ridge, where Gaia's will reshape the heavens, you reflect. How do the quiet alliances of today, forged in the shadows of necessity, shape the upheavals of tomorrow? The decade of stalemate. Logistical challenges in cosmic conflict. You stand on the rugged slopes of Mount Orthres, where the air crackles with tension and the earth trembles faintly beneath your feet. This is the opening of the Titanomachy, the decade-long war between the Titans and the Olympians, as recounted in Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC. Far from a clash of divine spectacle, the conflict was a grinding affair, bogged down by logistical hurdles that turned cosmic ambition into a slog of endurance. You can almost smell the dust of trampled earth as the Titans, led by Cronus, faced Zeus and his siblings. their rebellion rooted in the same meticulous planning Gaia used against Uranus in Story 3. The Titans, entrenched on Orthries, relied on their primordial domains to wage war. Oceanus controlled rivers, vital for supplying camps, while Tethys in short springs flowed for warriors' sustenance. These waterways, mirroring Bronze Age trade routes circa 2000 BC, were lifelines, as Mycenaean tablets show settlements depended on water management. Themis, goddess of law, organized the Titans' ranks, her decrees ensuring order among fighters, much like tribal leaders coordinated early Greek militias. Hyperion's solar tracking provided daylight for maneuvers, while Crius, obscure but strategic, likely monitored constellations for night raids, a practice echoed in later Greek navigation. Zeus Olympians, based on Mount Olympus, faced similar challenges. The regurgitated gods Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades. Poseidon lacked the Titans' entrenched infrastructure. Zeus, raised in Crete, leaned on mortal allies like Cretan shepherds whose knowledge of terrain, evidenced in Minoan artifacts, guided Olympian scouts. The war's early years were less about battles and more about securing resources. Both sides struggled to maintain supply lines across Greece's rugged landscape, where rivers could flood or dry up, disrupting plans. You might picture runners dashing between camps, carrying clay tablets with orders. A precursor to Greek messenger systems, the stalemate emerged from parity. The Titans' strength lay in their unity and experience, their roles honed during the Golden Age. The Olympians, younger and agile, countered with innovation, forging alliances with Cyclops and hundred-handed ones imprisoned by Cronus. These giants, freed by Zeus, promised weapons and brute force, but their integration was slow, requiring negotiations akin to tribal pacts in Mycenaean records. Both sides faced mundane obstacles, feeding warriors, repairing weapons, and maintaining morale during endless skirmishes. Hesiod notes the earth groaned under the conflict, a poetic nod to the strain on resources like the overtaxed fields of Bronze Age Greece. As you stand amidst this deadlock, the war's outcome unclear, you wonder, how could either side break through when logistics, not might, dictated the pace of this cosmic struggle? You're now in a shadowed valley between Mount Orthries and Olympus, where the clatter of bronze and the creak of carts signal the Titanomachy's relentless grind. As Section 1 described, the war's early years were mired in logistical stalemate, with Titans and Olympians wrestling not just with each other but with the mundane challenges of sustaining a decade-long conflict. Hesiod's Theogony paints a cosmic clash, but the reality was a tedious dance of supply chains, camp management and strategic maneuvering. As routine as a farmer's ledger yet critical to the war's outcome, you feel the weight of this protracted struggle where every river crossing or weapon forged shaped the divine deadlock. The Titans' strength was their established network. Oceanus rivers, vital for moving supplies, mirrored the trade routes of Minoan Crete circa 2000 BC, where ports thrived on steady water sources. Tethys in short springs fed encampments, a necessity reflected in Mycenaean water systems. Themis maintained discipline, her oral laws preventing desertions, much like tribal codes in early Greek societies. Hyperion's solar observations guided daytime raids, while Cuus, the intellectual Titan, calculated celestial timings for ambushes, a precursor to Greek astronomical records. You can imagine Titans overseeing supply caravans, their divine oversight ensuring grain and water reached warriors. Though floods or droughts, natural disruptions noted in Bronze Age texts often delayed plans, the Olympians, led by Zeus, faced steeper challenges. Operating from Olympus heights, they struggled with rugged terrain, as Crete's shepherds, familiar with such landscapes, advised on paths. Their supply lines depended on mortal allies whose villages, like those in Mycenaean records, provided grain and livestock. The Cyclops, forging thunderbolts, required raw materials, metals, and charcoal sourced from distant mines, a logistical feat akin to Bronze Age smithing. The hundred-handed ones, though powerful, needed constant provisioning, their appetites straining resources. You might picture Zeus negotiating with these giants, his diplomacy as crucial as his might, reflecting the tribal alliances of early Greece. Both sides grappled with morale. Titans, rooted in tradition, faced internal doubts as Cronus' paranoia evident in his imprisonment of allies weakened trust. The Olympians, younger and untested, relied on Zeus' charisma to unify their ranks. Skirmishes, often inconclusive, drained both sides, with warriors repairing weapons or tending wounds in camps lit by flickering fires. Hesiod's account of the Earth's groans reflects the strain on Greece's resources, a reality echoed in archaeological evidence of depleted fields during the Mycenaean decline. Circa 1200 BC, the war's pace was dictated by these mundane realities, moving supplies, securing water, maintaining order more than divine heroics. As you linger in this valley, hearing the distant clang of forges, you ponder, could the side that mastered these logistical tangles find the key to ending this endless stalemate? You stand now on a scarred plain, where the earth is churned from years of conflict, and the air carries the faint tang of smoke. The Titanomachy, described in Section 2 as a logistical quagmire, reaches its climax as Zeus' Olympians break the decade-long stalemate. Hesiod's Theogony recounts the war's end, not as a sudden clash, but as the culmination of mundane advantages, better weapons, strategic alliances, and resource management that tipped the scales. You sensed a shift, the weight of routine, tasks reshaping the cosmos, as the Olympians' persistence outmaneuvers the Titans' entrenched order. Zeus' victory hinged on his alliance with the Cyclops and hundred-handed ones, freed from Tartarus. The Cyclops' thunderbolts, forged with metals sourced from Crete's mines, gave the Olympians an edge, their craftsmanship echoing Mycenaean bronzework circa 1400 BC. The hundred-handed ones, with their immense strength, overwhelmed Titan lines, but their deployment required careful provisioning, grain, water, shelter organized by Zeus' mortal allies, much like the communal efforts in Minoan villages. Oceanus' defection, a lesser-known detail in some myths, weakened the Titans, his rivers no longer supplying their camps. A strategic loss akin to disrupted trade in Bronze Age Greece. The Titans, led by Cronus, faltered under logistical strain. Tethys' springs dried in contested regions, and Themis' laws couldn't quell growing dissent among warriors weary of stalemate. Hyperion's solar guidance was countered by Zeus-like raids, planned with Kua's celestial knowledge now serving both sides. The Titans' unity, once their strength, cracked as Cronus' paranoia evidenced by his past betrayals eroded. Trust. Hesiod notes the final battle's fury with earth and sky shaking, but it was the Olympians' superior resource management securing supplies, while starving Titan camps that sealed their fate. The war's end saw most Titans banished to Tartarus, but their logistical legacy endured. Oceanus rivers guided later Greek trade, Themis' laws shaped Athenian courts, and Hyperion's celestial observations influenced astronomers like Eudoxus. The Olympian order, with its temples and oracles built on these foundations, as seen in sites like Delphi. The Titanomachy's resolution mirrors the Mycenaean collapse circa 1200 BC, when new elites leveraged resources to supplant old powers. Zeus' triumph, rooted in mundane details like supply chains and alliances, shows how persistence in small tasks can shift history's course, much like modern systems rely on logistics to navigate crises. As you gaze across this now quiet plain, where the Olympians' new order takes root, you reflect, what can the slow, logistical victories of this mythic war teach us about the unseen efforts that shape today's turning points? Forging divine weapons, cyclopean craftsmanship, and material sinews stand in a cavern deep within a volcanic crag, where the air shimmers with heat and the tang of molten metal stings your nostrils. This is the forge of the Cyclops, the one-eyed giants whose craftsmanship, as recounted in Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC, shaped the divine weapons that turned the tide of the Titanomachy. The cosmic war described in Story 4. Far from mythical grandeur, their work was a laborious grind, rooted in the practical skills of Bronze Age metalworking. You can hear the rhythmic clang of hammers, each strike a testament to the Cyclops' role in arming Zeus' Olympians against the Titans. The Cyclops sages, Brontes, and Stoics were primordial craftsmen, their forges hidden in volcanic depths, possibly inspired by Crete's Mount Ida, where Minoan smiths worked bronze circa 2000 BC. Their task was to craft Zeus' thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helm of invisibility, weapons that symbolized divine power but required earthly materials and relentless effort. You might picture them hauling ore from rugged mines, their single eye squinting through smoke as they smelted metals. Archaeological finds from Mycenaean sites revealed bronze tools and weapons, suggesting the Cyclops' craft mirrored real-world techniques, blending charcoal, tin, and copper with meticulous care. Their work began after Zeus freed them from Tartarus, where Cronus had imprisoned them, fearing their strength. This liberation, a strategic move from Story 4, bound the Cyclops to the Olympian cause, but their forges demanded constant supply chains. Miners, likely mortal allies from Crete's hills, sourced metals while shepherds provided charcoal from felled oaks. The Cyclops cavern was a hub of activity, with bellows pumping air to stoke fires, a process akin to the smelting pits found in Bronze Age excavations. Each weapon required precise alloys, their proportions guarded like trade secrets, reflecting the specialized knowledge of early Greek smiths. The thunderbolt, Zeus' signature weapon, was no mere spark, but a composite of metal and divine intent, its creation a slow process of forging and cooling. The trident and helm, equally complex, demanded days of hammering and polishing, tasks as repetitive as a farmer's ploughing. Hesiod notes the Cyclops' unconquerable spirit, but their real strength lay in endurance, working through cycles of heat and rest. This mirrors the communal labor of Mycenaean workshops, where artisans collaborated to supply armies. You can imagine the Cyclops pausing to inspect their work, their single eyes gleaming with focus, ensuring each weapon met divine standards. Yet, as the forges roared, a question hung in the smoky air. Could the Cyclops' relentless labor produce weapons fast enough to shift the Titanomachy's stalemate before their resources ran dry? You're now deeper in the Cyclops Forge, where the glow of molten metal casts flickering shadows on jagged walls, and the air hums with the steady rhythm of hammer on anvil. Section 1 introduced the Cyclops' role in crafting divine weapons. For the Titanomachy, here, their work unfolds as a meticulous process, blending brute strength with the precision of artisans. Hesiod's Theogony describes their creations: Zeus' thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, Hades' helm as divine, but their crafting was grounded in the mundane realities of Bronze Age metalwork, a slow dance of logistics and skill. You feel the heat, the weight of their labor shaping the war's outcome. The Cyclops Forge was a marvel of organization, not unlike the workshops of Mycenaean Greece circa 1400 BC, where bronze swords and tools were mass-produced. Arges, brontes, and stirrups worked in tandem, each with a specialized role. One smelted ore, another shaped metal, the third polished the final product. Their materials, tin, copper, and rare ores, came from distant mines, possibly Crete or Cyprus, as archaeological records show extensive trade networks. You can picture mortal runners, their sandals worn from mountain paths, delivering sacks of ore to the forge, while charcoal piles, sourced from local forests, fueled the fires. Bellows, operated by unseen hands, kept flames roaring, a technique mirrored in Minoan smelting pits. Crafting the thunderbolt required blending metals to achieve a balance of strength and lightness, a process demanding exact ratios, much like the alloy recipes found in Mycenaean artifacts. The trident, with its pronged design, needed careful forging to ensure balance, while the helm's invisibility likely symbolized polished bronze that deflected light, a trick of craftsmanship rather than magic. Each weapon took days, even weeks, as the Cyclops hammered, cooled, and tested their work, their single eyes scanning for flaws. This precision reflects the Greeks' early metallurgical knowledge. Seen in the intricate bronze daggers of Knossos, logistics posed constant challenges. Supply lines faltered when rains turned paths to mud, a common issue in Bronze Age Greece. Delaying ore deliveries, the Cyclops also faced the task of scaling production to arm Zeus' growing forces, including the hundred-handed ones whose strength demanded reinforced weapons. You might imagine the giants debating alloy mixtures, In guttural tones, their decisions as critical as a council's grain allotments. Their alliance with Zeus, forged through his liberation of them, kept them committed. But the strain of endless forging tested their endurance. Much like the communal labor of Mycenaean workshops during wartime. As the forge's heat pulses, you wonder, could the Cyclops maintain their relentless pace? Or would the war's demands outstrip their ability to supply its divine arsenal? You stand now at the forge's entrance, where the clang of hammers has slowed and the air carries the sharp scent of cooled metal. The Cyclops' work, detailed in Section 2, reaches its culmination as their divine weapons Zeus' thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, Hades' helm shift the Titanomachy's balance, ending the decade-long stalemate from Story 4. Hesiod's Theogony credits these tools with the Olympians' victory, but their impact came from the Cyclops' relentless craftsmanship. Rooted in the practical metalworking of Bronze Age Greece, you sense the quiet triumph of their labor, a victory of endurance over divine might. The Thunderbolt, a masterpiece of alloyed metals, was lightweight yet devastating, its design reflecting Mycenaean bronze spears circa 1400 BC optimized for balance. Poseidon's trident, with its prongs forged for precision, could pierce or entangle, a weapon suited to naval tactics, echoing Crete's maritime culture. Hades' helm, likely a polished bronze cap, used reflective surfaces to confuse foes. A practical trick akin to early Greek armor designs, these weapons, delivered to Zeus' forces, turned skirmishes into decisive blows. The 100-handed ones, wielding Cyclopean-forged clubs, overwhelmed Titan lines, their strength amplified by tools tailored to their size, a logistical feat mirroring Mycenaean weapon stockpiles. The Cyclops' success came at a cost. All supplies dwindled as mines were overworked and charcoal stocks, drawn from Crete's forests, thinned, forcing longer treks for wood. Archaeological evidence from Knossos shows resource strain during wartime, a parallel to the Cyclops' challenges. Yet, their alliance with Zeus, cemented by gratitude, kept them forging through shortages. You can picture Arges inspecting a thunderbolt's edge, Brontes stoking the fire, and Stropes polishing a trident, their single eyes weary but resolute. Their work not only armed the Olympians but inspired mortal smiths whose bronze techniques, seen in Mycenaean daggers, carried Cyclopean echoes. The Titanomachy's end saw the Titans banished to Tartarus, their defeat sealed by weapons born of mundane craft. The Cyclops' forges, though, left a lasting mark. Their techniques influenced Greek metalworking, evident in classical armor at sites like Olympia. The thunderbolt became Zeus' symbol, etched into temple friezes while the trident shaped maritime iconography. This story of craftsmanship shows how small, repetitive tasks smelting, hammering, polishing can shift history's course. Much like modern industries drive progress through steady innovation, the Cyclops' unsung artisans remind us that victories, divine or mortal, often rest on the labor of those behind the scenes. As you leave the forge, its fires dimming, you reflect. How do the unseen efforts of today's craftsmen and workers shape the battles literal or figurative of our time? Designing the Trojan Horse, architectural plans, and deceptive engineering. You stand on a windswept plain outside the walls of Troy, where the salty tang of the Aegean mingles with the scent of pine from nearby forests. It's the 10th year of the Trojan War as recounted in Homer's Odyssey circa 8th century BC, and the Greeks, weary from siege, turn to a plan as audacious as it is mundane, the Trojan horse. Far from a divine inspiration, the horse's design was a feat of architectural planning and deceptive engineering rooted in the practical skills of Bronze Age Greece. You can almost hear the creak of timber and the murmur of craftsmen. Their work a quiet rebellion against the war's stalemate. The idea, credited to Odysseus but likely debated among Greek leaders, emerged from necessity. Troy's walls, described in the Iliad as towering and impregnable, mirrored the Cyclopean masonry of Mycenaean citadels like Turin's circa 1300 BC. Breaching them required not force but guile. Hippeus, a lesser-known Achaean craftsman, was tasked with designing the horse, a hollow structure to conceal warriors. You might picture him sketching plans on clay tablets, his tools borrowed from shipwrights who built the Greek fleet. The horse, a symbol of Trojan pride in their cavalry, was chosen to exploit cultural reverence, a tactic akin to psychological strategies in ancient warfare. The design process was laborious. Timber, likely cedar or oak from Mount Ida, had to be sourced, seasoned, and shaped. Archaeological evidence from late Bronze Age Greece shows advanced woodworking, with mortise and tenon joints used in ships and buildings. Epeius' team, including carpenters and laborers, worked under Odysseus' oversight, their meetings as routine as of village councils. The horse's size large enough to hold dozens of warriors, yet mobile required precise calculations, balancing structural integrity with the illusion of a votive offering. Wheels, a novel feature, were added to move it, inspired by carts used in Mycenaean trade. Materials were a challenge. Timber was plentiful but needed careful selection to avoid warping, a concern for shipwrights of the era. Ropes, woven from flax, secured joints, while hides or pitch sealed gaps to hide the warriors inside. You can imagine craftsmen hauling logs across the plain, their hands calloused from sawing and planing, their work illuminated by flickering torches. The Greeks' camp, a sprawl of tents and supply piles, buzzed with activity, its logistics, mirroring the resource management seen in Mycenaean linear tablets. The horse's deceptive purpose demanded secrecy, with only key leaders like Agamemnon and Menelaus privy to the plan, a secrecy akin to tribal pacts. As the horse's frame rises against the Trojan skyline, you wonder, could Epeius' team maintain the balance between engineering precision and deceptive artistry to fool Troy's watchful defenders? You're now amidst the Greek camp, where the half-finished Trojan horse looms, its wooden frame casting jagged shadows under the midday sun. Section 1 outlined the horse's blueprint. Here, the focus shifts to its construction, a meticulous process of woodworking and concealment that turned Odysseus' vision into reality. Homer's Odyssey hints at the horse's creation as a collective effort, but the details rooted in Bronze Age craftsmanship reveal a grind of measurements, fittings, and secrecy as routine as a shipyard's labor. You hear the rhythmic scrape of adzes, the air thick with sawdust and the weight of a war's end. Epeius, the chief craftsman, led a team of carpenters skilled in techniques honed on the Greek fleets. Ships, the horse's hollow body, designed to hide warriors like Odysseus and Diomedes, required a robust yet lightweight structure. Timber from Mount Ida, felled and seasoned to prevent cracking, was cut into planks using bronze saws, a method seen in Mycenaean shipbuilding circa 1300 BC. Joints were secured with wooden pegs and flax ropes, their strength tested to bear the weight of armed men. You can picture workers, their tunics stained with sweat, fitting planks with the precision of a Mycenaean palace's masonry, ensuring no creak betrayed the warriors inside. Concealment was paramount. The horse's exterior was clad in smooth planks, polished to mimic a votive statue, its surface sealed with pitch or animal hides to mask seams. This mirrors the decorative techniques of Bronze Age artisans, whose pottery and frescoes, found at Knossos, show attention to aesthetic detail. A trapdoor, hidden beneath the horse's belly, was engineered with counterweights, allowing silent entry and exit, a feat requiring mechanical knowledge akin to early pulley systems. Wheels crafted from oak and reinforced with bronze enabled mobility. Their design inspired by trade carts and linear B records, logistics strained the effort. Timber supplies dwindled as forests were overcut, forcing longer treks to Mount Ida. A challenge echoed in Mycenaean resource shortages. Food and water for the workers, drawn from camp stores, competed with the army's needs, requiring careful rationing. Secrecy added complexity. Only a trusted few knew the horse's purpose, with laborers told it was a religious offering, a lie maintained through Odysseus' oversight. You might imagine whispered orders in torchlit tents, the camp's bustle masking the project's true intent. Much like covert operations in ancient tribal alliances, the horse's dual role as both functional and deceptive demanded relentless coordination. Epeius' team worked through nights, their tools clattering softly to avoid Trojan scouts. The Greeks' success hinged on this balance of engineering and illusion, a microcosm of their war-weary ingenuity. As the horse nears completion, its wooden form gleaming, you ponder, could this fragile construct, born of mundane labor, truly deceive a city hardened by a decade of siege? You stand before the completed Trojan horse, its massive form looming on the Trojan plain, the wood polished to a deceptive sheen under the fading light, section to detailed its construction. Now, the horse fulfills its purpose as recounted in Homer's Odyssey and Virgil's Aeneid circa 1st century BC. The Greeks' ruse, a blend of architectural precision and psychological cunning, ends the Trojan War, not through force but through the quiet triumph of craftsmanship. You feel the weight of this moment, where mundane labor reshapes a city's fate. Its echoes rippling through history. The horse's final stages required exacting work. Epeia's team, using Mycenaean woodworking techniques, ensured the structure held 30 warriors, Odysseus, Diomedes, Menelaus among them, without collapsing. The trapdoor, concealed with flush planks, operated smoothly, its hinges greased with animal fat, a detail akin to Bronze Age mechanical ingenuity. The wheels, reinforced with bronze bands, rolled the horse to Troy's gates, a feat planned with the precision of a trade caravan as seen in linear tablets. To complete the deception, the Greeks inscribed the horse as a gift to Athena, a ploy rooted in Trojan reverence for the goddess, evidenced by later temple offerings at Troy's ruins. Moving the horse was a logistical ordeal. The Greek camp was dismantled to feign retreat, with ships hidden on Tenedo, requiring coordinated timing to fool Trojan scouts. Sinon, a Greek left behind, convinced Troy's leaders Priam and his council that the horse was safe, his tale of betrayal echoing the diplomatic ruses of Mycenaean alliances. The Trojans, weary from siege, dragged the horse inside, unaware of the warriors within, their decision swayed by cultural trust in divine gifts, a practice seen in Bronze Age votive deposits. The night raid sealed Troy's fate. Odysseus' team emerged, opened the gates, and let the Greek army in, ending the war. The horse's success was no divine miracle, but a triumph of planning, timber sourcing, secret construction, strategic deception mirroring Mycenaean logistics during the late Bronze Age collapse circa 1200 BC. Its legacy endured in Greek storytelling, with the horse symbolizing cunning over might, etched into pottery and later epics. The craftsmanship of Epeia's team influenced Hellenistic engineering, seen in siege machines at Rhodes, showing how mundane skills shaped grand outcomes. This story of subtle engineering reveals the power of collective effort. Much like modern projects rely on unsung workers to achieve breakthroughs, the Trojan horse, born of sawdust and secrecy, reminds us that history's turning points often hinge on quiet, deliberate labor. As you gaze at Troy's smoldering ruins, the horse's silhouette fading, you reflect, how do today's overlooked efforts, from logistics to design, pave the way for tomorrow's victories? The siege of Troy, supply chains and soldier routines. You stand on the windswept Trojan plain, where the salty breeze from the Aegean carries the faint clatter of Greek encampments, sprawling before Troy's towering walls. The Trojan War, as recounted in Homer's Iliad circa 8th century BC, stretched across a decade, its endurance not a tale of constant battles, but of relentless logistics and soldierly routines. Unlike the deceptive engineering of the Trojan horse in Story 6, the siege's backbone was its supply chains, as vital as the warriors themselves. You can almost smell the smoke of cook fires and hear the creak of ox carts, their wheels grinding under the weight of a war sustained by mundane persistence. The Greeks, led by Agamemnon, camped along the coast, their tents a patchwork of linen and hides mirroring Mycenaean settlements circa 1300 BC. Feeding thousands of warriors required a steady flow of grain, olives, and livestock, sourced from allied regions like Thessaly or Crete. Linear tablets from Pylos revealed detailed records of grain shipments, suggesting the Greeks relied on similar logistics. Ships beached near the camp ferried supplies across the Aegean, their routes planned with the precision of trade networks. You might picture quartermasters tallying amphorae of wine and barley, their clay tablets etched with numbers ensuring no soldier went hungry. Water was another challenge. Rivers like the Scamander, mentioned in the Iliad, provided fresh water, but sieges demanded constant supply to avoid disease. Workers dug channels to divert streams, a technique seen in Mycenaean irrigation systems, while guards protected these. Lifelines from Trojan raids. Soldiers' daily routines were equally structured. Dawn patrols scouted Trojan movements. Midday drills honed spear skills, and evenings brought communal meals under starlit skies. These routines, rooted in discipline, echoed the tribal militias of Bronze Age Greece, where order sustained long campaigns. Troy, within its Cyclopean walls, faced parallel struggles. The city's granaries, like those excavated at Hyssalic Troyes, likely site stored wheat and dried fish, but 10 years strained reserves. Trojan allies, like the Lycians, sent caravans of grain, navigating perilous routes past Greek scouts. Priam's council, much like Mycenaean Wainax leaders, rationed food and rotated guards to maintain morale. You can imagine Trojan women grinding barley in courtyards, their work as vital as warriors' spears, their lives bound by the same relentless rhythm. Yet, as the siege dragged on, both sides faced exhaustion. Supply lines faltered under storms or ambushes, and soldiers grew weary of repetitive tasks. As you stand amidst the Greek camp, hearing the distant clang of bronze, you wonder, could these fragile lifelines hold? Or would the siege's grinding routines break the resolve of Greeks? And Trojans alike, you're now within the Greek camp, where the scent of roasted mutton mingles with the tang of sea salt, and the hum of daily routines sustains the Trojan War's decade-long siege. Section 1 outlined the supply chains that kept the Greeks and Trojans fed. Here, the focus shifts to the soldiers' repetitive tasks, as vital to the war as any battle. Homer's Iliad hints at these routines, but their details, rooted in Bronze Age practices, reveal a war of attrition fought through discipline and persistence. You hear the soft clink of armor being polished, a sound as steady as the siege itself. Greek soldiers followed a rigid schedule. Dawn brought patrols along the Scamander, scouting for Trojan sorties, their routes planned using terrain knowledge from local allies. Akin to Mycenaean reconnaissance circa 1300 BC, midday was for training, spearmen practiced thrusts, archers honed aim, and charioteers repaired wheels, their skills mirroring those found in Linear B records of military upkeep. Evenings saw communal meals, with warriors sharing bread and wine. Around fires, their camaraderie a bulwark against despair. You might picture a young Achaean sharpening his spear, his hands calloused from years of the same task, his life bound to the camp's rhythm. Troy's defenders mirrored these routines. Within their walls, sentries rotated shifts atop the Cyclopean battlements, their vigilance recorded in the Iliad as a constant strain. Artisans repaired shields and swords, using bronze techniques seen in Trojan artifacts at Hyssalic. Women and children contributed, weaving cloth for bandages or grinding grain, their labor sustaining the city's defiance. Much like the communal efforts in Mycenaean palaces, Priam's council rationed supplies, prioritizing warriors, a practice echoed in Bronze Age resource management. You can imagine a Trojan guard, his eyes scanning the Greek camp at dusk, his thoughts drifting to home yet tethered to duty. Supply chains remained the siege's pulse. The Greeks relied on ships bringing barley and olives from allied cities, but storms or Trojan raiders disrupted deliveries, forcing ration cuts. Troy's caravans from allies like the Dardanians faced similar risks, their oxen trudging through contested plains. Both sides dug wells and channels as seen in Mycenaean hydraulic systems to secure water, but contamination or sabotage threatened health. These logistical struggles, mundane yet critical, shaped morale as much as any skirmish. A missed shipment could spark hunger, a broken will could delay a raid, and both camps felt the war's weight in these small failures. The siege's endurance tested human limits. Soldiers, Greek and Trojan, grew weary of drills and patrols, their lives a cycle of waiting and working. Leaders like Agamemnon and Hector maintained order, but whispers of dissent grew as seen in the Iliad's tensions. As you sit by a Greek campfire, hearing tales of home, you ponder, could these routines, so vital to survival, sustain both sides through another year of stalemate? Or would exhaustion force a desperate act? You stand now on the Trojan plain, where dawn breaks over a silent Greek camp, its tents abandoned and the Trojan Horse from Story 6, standing ominously before Troy's gates. The siege, sustained by the supply chains and routines of Section 2, ends not in battle but through deception, as recounted in Homer's Odyssey and Iliad. The Greeks' victory hinged on the mundane logistics that kept their army intact for a decade, allowing the horses' ruse to succeed. You feel the quiet weight of this moment, where years of repetitive labor culminate in a city's fall. The Greek supply chains, though strained, held firm. Ships from Crete and Mycenae delivered grain and wine, their schedules refined over years as linear tablets show for Bronze Age trade. Water channels dug to tap the Scamander prevented disease, a feat of engineering akin to Mycenaean cisterns. Soldier routines, patrols, drills. Meals maintained discipline, enabling the Greeks to feign retreat, hiding their fleet at Tenedo. This deception, planned in secret councils, relied on the camp's logistical backbone to stage the withdrawal convincingly. A tactic echoing Bronze Age diplomatic ruses. Troy's routines, equally disciplined, faltered at the end. Granaries, stocked through allied caravans, sustained the city, but 10 years depleted morale. As seen in the Iliad's weary Trojan debates, guards, rotating atop the walls, grew complacent, their vigilance dulled by routine. When the Trojans, swayed by Sinon's lies and their reverence for Athena, dragged the horse inside, they overlooked its weight, a fatal misstep. The warriors inside Odysseus, Diomedes, others emerged at night, opening the gates for the Greek army. Troy burned, its fall a testament to the Greeks' logistical endurance over Trojan resilience. The siege's legacy shaped Greek culture. The discipline of supply chains and routines influenced classical warfare. Seen in Athenian naval logistics, Troy's ruins, excavated at Hisarlik, reveal a city reliant on trade, its loss a warning of overconfidence. The war's end, driven by mundane tasks rationing, patrolling. Deceiving mirrors modern conflicts where logistics determine outcomes, from supply lines to strategic fights. The unsung workers, quartermasters, water carriers, craftsmen proved, as vital as heroes, their labor a quiet force behind history's turning points. As you gaze at Troy's smoldering walls, the horse's silhouette fading, you reflect. How do the overlooked routines of today's workers, logisticians, planners, laborers shape the victories and defeats of our modern struggles? Odysseus' cunning, committee discussions, and prototype testing. You stand in the dim light of a Greek tent on the Trojan plain, where the scent of olive oil lamps mingles with the salt of the Aegean. It's the 10th year of the Trojan War, as told in Homer's Odyssey circa 8th century BC, and Odysseus, the wily king of Ithaca, gathers with Greek leaders to devise a plan to end the siege described in Story 7. Far from a stroke of genius, the Trojan Horse, introduced in Story 6, emerged from tedious committee discussions, a process as routine as a Mycenaean council meeting. You hear the low murmur of voices, each word weighed with the fatigue of a decade-long war. Odysseus, known for cunning, proposed the horse a deceptive offering to breach Troy's walls. The idea wasn't born in isolation but in a tent crowded, with leaders like Agamemnon, Menelaus, and Nestor, their debates mirroring the tribal councils of Bronze Age Greece circa 1300 BC, as seen in linear tablets recording deliberations. Odysseus argued for a hollow wooden structure to hide warriors, exploiting Troy's reverence for horses and Athena. You can picture him pacing, his gestures measured, sketching plans on the dirt floor with a stick, his voice calm but insistent. As he outlined the ruse, the committee's discussions were methodical. Agamemnon, the commander, questioned the plan's feasibility, citing the siege's strained resources. Nestor, the elder, drew on past campaigns, suggesting the horse mimic votive statues, a practice common in Minoan sanctuaries. Epeius, the craftsman from Story 6, was summoned to assess construction, his expertise in shipbuilding vital for the design. The group debated materials, cedar or oak from Mount Island size, balancing concealment with mobility. These talks, held over days, were as bureaucratic as Mycenaean palace records, with scribes noting decisions on clay tablets, Secrecy was paramount. Only a select few knew the plan's true purpose, a tactic akin to covert alliances in Bronze Age diplomacy. Odysseus managed dissent, convincing skeptics like Diomedes by emphasizing Troy's cultural blind spots. The committee also planned the Greeks' feigned retreat, coordinating with ship captains to hide the fleet at Tenedo, a logistical feat tied to Story 7's supply chains. You might imagine the tense tension, leaders hunched over plans, their faces lit by flickering flames, weighing each detail against the risk of failure. As the council disperses, the horse's concept approved but untested, you wonder, could Odysseus' cunning navigate the practical challenges of turning this debated idea into a functional deception? You're now amidst the Greek camp, where the clatter of hammers and the scent of sawdust signal the first steps of building the Trojan Horse as planned in Section 1. Odysseus' cunning, lauded in Homer's Odyssey, takes shape through prototype testing, a process as meticulous as Mycenaean shipbuilding. Far from a seamless creation, the horse's development involved trial and error, with craftsmen like Epeius wrestling with practical challenges under Odysseus' watchful eye. You feel the rhythm of their labor, a grind of measurements and adjustments that turned a committee's vision into reality. Epeius, tasked with construction, began with a scaled-down model, using timber from Mount Ida, sourced through the supply chains of Story 7. This prototype, no taller than a man, tested the horse's hollow design, ensuring it could hold warriors without collapsing. Carpenters, skilled in techniques seen in Mycenaean shipyards circa 1300 BC, used mortise and tenon joints, their tools scraping wood into precise shapes. You can picture Odysseus inspecting the model, his sharp eyes noting every seam, demanding. A trapdoor that opened silently, a feature inspired by pulley systems in Bronze Age trade carts. Testing revealed flaws. The first model buckled under the weight of mock warriors, forcing recalculations of plank thickness and bracing. Odysseus, ever pragmatic, called for stronger oak and additional ropes, woven from flax to reinforce joints. These adjustments mirrored the iterative process of Mycenaean bronzeworking, where tools were refined through trials. The wheels, critical for mobility, posed another hurdle. Early versions, made of solid wood, sank in the sandy plain, requiring bronze reinforcements, a technique seen in chariot remains. You might imagine craftsmen rolling the model across the camp, its creaks drawing curious glances. The ruse disguised as a religious project to maintain secrecy. Odysseus coordinated with a small circle Epeius, Diomedes, and a few trusted aides ensuring leaks didn't reach Trojan scouts. The committee's discussions continued. Refining the plan, the horse's exterior was polished to mimic a votive statue, its deceptive sheen hiding the warriors within. This aesthetic, rooted in Minoan art's polished surfaces, aimed to sway Troy's priests. The Greeks also tested the feigned retreat, practicing signals to synchronize the fleet's withdrawal to Tenedo, a logistical echo of Story 7's naval routines. Each test, from structural integrity to deceptive appearance, was a small battle against failure. The prototype's success boosted morale, but scaling it to full size loomed large. Timber shortages and worker fatigue, compounded by the sieges, demands strained resources. As you watch the model gleam under torchlight, its flaws corrected but its full form unbuilt, you ponder, could Odysseus' team overcome the logistical hurdles to craft a horse convincing enough to breach Troy's gates? You stand now before the completed Trojan horse, its polished wood gleaming on the Trojan plain, a monument to Odysseus' cunning and the rigorous testing of Section 2. As recounted in Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, the horse's success ended the Trojan War, not through divine intervention but through the mundane triumph of planning, prototyping, and execution. You sense the quiet weight of this moment, where committee debates and craftsmen's labor, rooted in Bronze Age ingenuity, outwitted a city's defenses. Scaling the prototype to its final form was a logistical feat. Epeius' team, using techniques from Mycenaean shipbuilding, constructed the full-sized horse with reinforced oak planks, secured by flax ropes and bronze pegs. The trapdoor, perfected through trials, opened silently with greased hinges, allowing warriors like Odysseus and Diomedes to hide within. Wheels, now sturdy with bronze bands, rolled smoothly, their design echoing trade carts in Linear B records. The horse's exterior, clad in polished cedar to mimic a votive offering, exploited Troy's reverence for Athena, a tactic grounded in Minoan religious art circa 1300 BC. Odysseus' coordination ensured secrecy. The Greeks' feigned retreat, rehearsed in camp drills, saw the fleet hide at Tenedo, a maneuver synchronized with signals like those in Mycenaean naval logistics. Sin's role, convincing the Trojans the horse was safe, was planned in committee. His story of betrayal crafted to exploit Trojan trust, as seen in Bronze Age diplomatic ruses. The Trojans, weary from the siege of Story 7, dragged the horse inside, their decision swayed by cultural faith in divine gifts, evidenced by votive finds at Hisarlik. The night raid warriors emerging to open Troy's gates succeeded because of tested engineering, the horse's stability, proven in prototypes, held under the weight of 30 men, and its deceptive design fooled Trojan scouts. Troy's fall, as the Greek army poured in, marked the end of a decade-long siege, its outcome a testament to mundane details, timber sourcing, joint reinforcement, and secret planning. The horse's legacy shaped Greek storytelling, its image on pottery symbolizing cunning over might, while its engineering influenced Hellenistic siege machines. Odysseus' triumph, born of committee debates and relentless testing, mirrors modern projects where collaboration and iteration drive success. From technology to strategy, the unsung craftsmen and planners like those in Mycenaean workshops proved as vital as heroes. As you gaze at Troy's ruins, the horse's silhouette fading, you reflect, how do today's quiet efforts meetings, prototypes, small adjustments shape the breakthroughs that define our future? Themis oracles, daily dispensation of justice in ancient court sighs stand beneath a sprawling oak, in a quiet grove, where the air carries the scent of damp earth and the faint murmur of gathered villagers. This is the realm of Themis, the Titan, goddess of divine law, whose oracles shaped justice in ancient Greece, as described in Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC. Far from the cosmic battles of the Titanomachy in Story 4, Themis' work was a daily routine of dispensing fairness, as routine as a farmer's tally of grain. You can almost hear her calm voice, guiding disputes with the weight of cosmic order. Her presence a bridge between myth and the practical needs of early Greek society. Themis, one of the few titans to join Zeus' Olympian order, embodied justice and prophecy. Her courts, often open-air gatherings in groves or village squares, mirrored the communal assemblies of Bronze Age Greece circa 1300 BC, as seen in Linear B tablets recording tribal councils, disputes over land boundaries, stolen livestock, or broken betrothals were brought before her oracles, priests and priestesses who channeled her wisdom. You might picture a village elder, clay tablet in hand, reciting a grievance while Themis oracle, seated on a stone bench, listened with measured calm. Her rulings rooted in unwritten codes that predated written law. Her process was meticulous. Disputes were heard methodically, with witnesses offering testimony under oath, a practice echoed in later Greek legal systems. Themis oracles weighed evidence, not with scales but through precedent and custom, ensuring outcomes aligned with the community's harmony. This reflected Mycenaean social structures, where leaders resolved conflicts to maintain trade and agriculture, as evidenced by palace records. Offerings, grain, wine, or woven cloth were made to honor Themis, their simplicity mirroring votive deposits found at Minoan sanctuaries. You can imagine villagers waiting in the grove's shade, their disputes mundane but vital to their livelihoods. Themis' role extended beyond local courts. Her oracles, delivered in rhythmic chants, guided leaders on matters of war or alliance. Much like the Delphic oracle later did, her connection to Gaia, from Story 3, tied her justice to the Earth's balance, ensuring rulings respected natural cycles. Her influence shaped early Greek values of fairness, seen in the communal ethos of Homeric epics. Yet, her work was not without challenge. Balancing divine impartiality with human passions required constant vigilance as every ruling risked unrest dotters. You linger in this grove, hearing the oracle's measured words. You wonder, could Themis' daily dispensations maintain harmony in a society? Fraying under the weight of human disputes, you're now seated in the shade of Themis Grove, where the rustle of leaves blends with the soft voices of disputants awaiting judgment. Section 1 introduced Themis' role in dispensing justice. Here, the focus shifts to the daily machinery of her courts, a system of rituals and routines as precise as a Mycenaean scribe's records. Hesiod's Theogony portrays Themis as the embodiment of divine law, but her oracles operated through practical processes that sustained order in early Greek communities. You feel the rhythm of these proceedings. Where mundane details shaped fairness in a world of human flaws, Themis courts were decentralized, held in groves, village squares, or near sacred springs, reflecting the communal gatherings of bronze. Age Greece circa 1300 BC, priests or priestesses, acting as her oracles, followed a structured routine. They began with offerings barley oil, or linen placed on stone altars, a practice seen in Minoan votive deposits. Disputants, from farmers to chieftains, presented their cases, often over land or marriage disputes, their words recorded by scribes on clay tablets, as evidenced by linear archives. You can picture an oracle, robed in simple wool, listening intently as a shepherd recounts a stolen flock, her response drawn from custom and divine insight. The process was deliberate. Witnesses were summoned, their testimonies weighed against oral traditions preserved by Mnemosyne, the titan of memory from story to. Themis oracles used no written laws but relied on precedent, much like the unwritten codes of Mycenaean palaces that ensured equitable resource distribution. Rulings were delivered in rhythmic chants, their cadence calming tensions, a technique echoed in later Greek oratory. Punishments, restitution, or public apologies aimed to restore balance, not vengeance, aligning with the communal ethos of early Greek society seen in Homeric epics. Beyond local disputes, Themis oracles advised on broader matters. Chieftains sought her guidance on alliances or harvests, her prophecies shaped by signs like bird flights or spring flows, a practice rooted in Minoan divination. Her connection to the earth, inherited from Gaia, ensured rulings respected natural cycles, such as planting seasons vital for Bronze Age economies. You might imagine villagers waiting days for a ruling, their lives paused as Themis oracle consulted omens, their work as routine as grinding grain yet critical to stability. Challenges persisted. Disputes grew complex as communities expanded, and oracles faced pressure to remain impartial amidst tribal loyalties. Themis' divine authority, though respected, relied on mortal trust, a fragile bond in a world of rivalries. As you watch the oracle pronounce a verdict, the crowd nodding in reluctant agreement, you ponder, could Themis' meticulous system of justice withstand the growing complexities of human ambition and conflict? You stand now at the edge of Themis Grove, where twilight casts long shadows and the air hums with the finality of a day's judgments. Section 2 detailed the machinery of Themis courts here. Her oracles reached their culmination, shaping a legacy of justice that endures beyond the mythic era. Hesiod's Theogony credits Themis with establishing divine law, but her daily dispensations, rooted in Bronze Age practices, laid the foundations for Greek legal systems. You sense the quiet weight of her influence where mundane routines forged societal harmony. Themis oracles resolved countless disputes, from stolen goats to boundary quarrels, their rulings binding communities through trust. Each case followed a pattern: offerings, testimony, and chanted verdicts, a process mirroring Mycenaean assemblies circa 1300 BC that managed trade and land disputes. Her priests ensured fairness by drawing on oral traditions, their decisions, preventing feuds that could disrupt harvests or alliances. As seen in Linear B records of resource allocation, you can imagine a farmer accepting a ruling to share his field, his grudge softened by Themis' impartiality, her oracle's voice echoing the earth's balance. Her broader influence shaped Greek governance. Themis oracles advised chieftains on war or diplomacy, Their prophecies based on omens like wind patterns guiding decisions that stabilized tribes. This practice, rooted in Minoan divination, evolved into the Delphic oracle, whose influence is evident in classical Greek inscriptions. Themis' emphasis on balance inspired the concept of Dikê, justice, central to later Athenian courts, where juries echoed her communal approach. Archaeological finds, like votive offerings at sanctuaries, show her cult's persistence, tying justice to divine and natural order. Yet, Themis' system faced limits. As Greek society grew complex, with trade networks expanding and city-states forming, her oracles struggled to address new disputes. Like those over maritime rights, mortal rivalries tested her priests' impartiality, risking distrust, a challenge seen in Homeric tales of feuding heroes. Her legacy, though, endured. Her principles of fairness shaped the Agora's legal debates and the bull's deliberations. In classical Greece, Themis courts, born of routine, proved that justice, like farming, required steady labor to thrive. This legacy resonates today, where systems of fairness courts, mediation, governance rely on consistent processes to maintain trust. Themis' unsung oracles, resolving disputes in groves, remind us that small, deliberate acts underpin societal stability, much like modern mediators or bureaucrats shape our world. As you leave the grove, the oak's branches swaying, you reflect. How do today's quiet efforts to maintain justice, often unnoticed, ensure the balance of our communities amidst growing complexity? Weighing the scales, bureaucratic records of Greek legal proceedings stand in a sunlit village square in ancient Greece, where the scent of olive groves mingles with the faint scratch of stylus on clay. It's the early, archaic period circa 800 to 600 BC, and the legal proceedings inspired by Themis oracles in Story 9 have evolved into a system of bureaucratic record-keeping as vital to justice as the rulings themselves. Far from the divine pronouncements of myth, these records, etched by scribes, were the backbone of order in early Greek communities. You hear the soft clink of tablets being stacked, each mark preserving fairness in a world of disputes. In the wake of the Bronze Age collapse circa 1200 BC, Greek society relied on oral traditions, but as communities grew, so did the need for written records. Linear B tablets from Mycenaean palaces circa 1400 BC show early bureaucratic practices, tallying goods and labor, a precursor to legal documentation. By the archaic period, scribes, often minor priests or trained villagers, recorded disputes in open-air courts, much like those Themis oversaw. These proceedings, held in squares or groves, addressed quarrels over land, livestock, or dowries. Their outcomes etched onto clay or, later, papyrus imported from Egypt as trade networks expanded. The process was methodical. A chieftain or elder, acting as judge, heard testimony while scribes sat cross-legged, their styluses carving shorthand notes. Disputes, like a farmer claiming a neighbor's ox, were documented with details, names, dates, and evidence such as a witness's oath sworn to Zeus. These records, stored in village archives or temple storerooms, ensured rulings could be revisited, a practice echoed in later Athenian legal inscriptions. You might picture a scribe, his fingers stained with clay dust, meticulously noting a boundary dispute, his work ensuring the community's trust in justice. This bureaucracy drew on mythic roots. Themis, the titan of divine law, symbolized balance, and her influence lingered in the scribe's precision. Their records a mortal echo of her oracles. Archaeological finds, like the Pylos tablets, show similar attention to detail in resource disputes, suggesting continuity from Mycenaean to archaic systems. Scribes also recorded offerings, grain or oil given to sanctuaries for fair rulings, a custom rooted in Minoan votive practices. These documents, though mundane, were vital, preventing feuds that could disrupt harvests or trade. As seen in Homeric epics, yet this fledgling system faced challenges. Scribes, often few in number, struggled to keep up with growing disputes, and clay tablets were fragile, prone to breaking or fading. As you watch a scribe finish his tablet, the square bustling with villagers, you wonder, could this meticulous record-keeping sustain justice? As Greek society grew ever more complex, you're now in a shaded corner of a Greek village archive, where the air smells of dried clay and the faint rustle of papyrus signals the ongoing work of legal scribes. Section 1 introduced the bureaucratic records of justice. Here, the focus shifts to the daily machinery of documentation, a process as routine as grinding grain yet essential to maintaining order. Building on Themis' legacy from Story 9, these records, rooted in early archaic practices circa 800 to 600 BC, preserved fairness in a society of growing complexity. You hear the soft scrape of styluses, each mark a testament to the scribe's quiet labor. Scribes operated in village squares or temple annexes, their workstations cluttered with clay tablets or, increasingly, papyrus rolls from Egypt, reflecting trade networks seen in archaeological finds. A typical case, say, a dispute over a stolen harvest, began with a judge or elder hearing testimony, while scribes recorded details, the plaintiff's name, the accused's defense, and witness accounts, often sworn to gods like Zeus or Apollo. These records, etched in early Greek scripts like the Phoenician-derived alphabet, mirrored the precision of Mycenaean linear B tablets, which tracked disputes over land or labor. You can picture a scribe, his reed stylus steady, noting a farmer's claim under the watchful eyes of villagers. The process was structured. Cases were catalogued by type property, marriage, or trade, with rulings summarized for future reference. Scribes cross-checked testimonies against oral traditions, a nod to Mnemosyne's memory from Story 2, ensuring consistency. Records were stored in clay jars or wooden chests, often in sanctuaries. As seen in Minoan's storerooms at Knossos, these archives served as legal memory, allowing judges to consult past rulings, a practice that prefigured classical Athenian legal codes. Offerings, olives, wool, or wine were noted alongside rulings, linking justice to divine favor. A custom rooted in Bronze Age rituals, logistical challenges abounded. Papyrus was costly, and clay tablets, though durable, could crack in storage. Scribes, trained in temples or by elders, were scarce, their work slowed by the need to verify details with witnesses, a process that could take days. You might imagine a scribe, pausing to sharpen his stylus, his brow furrowed as he deciphers a witness's dialect, his role as vital as any warrior's. The system's reliance on accuracy mirrored Themis' balance, but human error or bias risked undermining trust, especially in disputes involving powerful families, as seen in Homeric tales of rivalry. The growing complexity of Greek society, trade, roots expanding, populations rising, strained this bureaucracy. Scribes struggled to document every case, and remote villages often relied on oral rulings, risking inconsistency. As you watch a scribe seal a tablet, the archive's shelves filling, you ponder, could this fragile system of records keep pace with a society on the cusp of greater legal demands? You stand now in the quiet of a temple storeroom, where rows of clay tablets and papyrus rolls cast faint shadows, their surfaces etched with the legal proceedings of an ancient Greek world. Section to detail the machinery of documentation. Here, the scribe's work culminates in a legacy that shaped justice from the archaic period, circa 800 to 600 BC to classical Greece. Rooted in Themis oracles from Story 9, these bureaucratic records, though mundane, preserved societal order, their influence enduring in later legal systems. You feel the weight of their quiet triumph, a ledger of fairness built through relentless precision. The scribe's records, cataloguing disputes over land, trade, or kinship, became the backbone of community trust. Each tablet noted the plaintiff, defendant, evidence, and ruling, often sealed with a judge's mark, a practice echoing Mycenaean administrative seals circa 1400 BC. These documents, stored in sanctuaries, allowed elders to resolve recurring disputes, like those over grazing rights, by referencing past cases, ensuring consistency. Archaeological finds, such as the Gorton Code circa 500 BC, showed this evolution, with written laws emerging from earlier oral and scribal traditions. You can imagine a scribe retrieving a tablet, its details settling a heated quarrel, his work as vital as any oracle's chant. The system's reach extended beyond villages, Records of major rulings on alliances or resource disputes guided. Chieftains, their details informing trade agreements with regions like Egypt or Anatolia, as evidenced by archaic pottery trade. Scribes also noted offerings tied to rulings, linking justice to divine favor, a custom seen in votive deposits at Delphi. This bureaucracy, inspired by Themis' balance, influenced classical Athenian courts, where written laws and jury tablets formalized the scribes' methods. The Agora's legal debates, documented in inscriptions, owe their roots to these early records, yet the system's limits were evident. Fragile tablets broke, papyrus faded, and scribes couldn't document every case as city-states grew. Bias crept in when powerful families swayed judges, a tension seen in Homeric epics where justice faltered under influence. Despite these flaws, the scribes' work laid the foundation for Greek legal culture. Their records a mortal echo of Themis' impartiality. This legacy resonates today, where bureaucratic systems court filings, legal databases uphold fairness. Through routine, much like modern clerks ensure justice's continuity. As you gaze at the storeroom's shelves, the tablets' inscriptions fading yet enduring, you reflect, how do today's unsung record keepers, preserving the details of justice, shape the stability of our complex world? Dikê's balance, social order, and dispute resolution in daily life. You stand in a bustling village square in ancient Greece, where the scent of freshly baked bread blends with the chatter of farmers and weavers. It's the archaic period circa 800 to 600 BC, and Dikê, the goddess of justice, oversees the daily resolution of disputes, as described in Hesiod's works and days. Unlike the divine oracles of Themis in Story 9, or the bureaucratic records of Story 10, Dikê's influence is felt in the mundane routines of village life, where fairness maintains social harmony. You hear the clink of pottery as villagers gather, their disputes as ordinary as the dust beneath their sandals. Dikê, daughter of Themis and Zeus, embodied moral justice, ensuring communities thrived through equitable resolutions. Her presence was not in grand temples, but in the small acts of fairness that kept villages cohesive. Disputes over a stray goat, a disputed boundary, or a broken trade deal were settled in open-air gatherings, much like the assemblies recorded. In linear tablets from Mycenaean times, circa 1300 BC, village elders, acting as judges, invoked Dikê's spirit, their rulings guided by custom rather than written law. A practice rooted in oral traditions. These gatherings were routine. A farmer might accuse a neighbor of stealing olives, presenting witnesses under a sacred oak, while children watched from the sidelines. The elder listened, weighing testimony with the calm of a shepherd sorting flocks. Resolutions often involved restitution, returning the olives, or sharing a harvest, reflecting the communal ethos of Bronze Age Greece, where cooperation ensured survival. Archaeological finds, like communal granaries at Knossos, suggest such equitable sharing. You can picture women bringing offerings of bread or wool to Dikê's modest shrine, their gestures tying justice to daily life. Dikê's influence extended to moral conduct. Hesiod warns that her watchful eyes reported injustice to Zeus, urging honesty in trade and family dealings. This belief shaped village behavior, discouraging theft or deceit, much like the social codes in Homeric epics. Her role complemented Themis' divine law, grounding it in everyday disputes, while the scribes of Story 10 recorded her rulings for posterity. Yet, maintaining balance was challenging. Powerful families could sway elders, and emotions often clouded fairness, as seen in tales of rivalry in the Iliad. As you stand in this square, watching a dispute settled with a shared jug of wine, you wonder, could Dikê's quiet oversight keep village harmony intact as tensions and ambitions grew? You're now seated on a stone bench in the village square, where the hum of daily life, vendors hawking figs, children chasing hoops, frames the steady work of dispute resolution under Dikê's watchful gaze. Section 1 introduced her role in maintaining social order. Here, the focus shifts to the daily routines of resolving conflicts, a process as regular as sowing fields yet vital to community cohesion. Hesiod's works and days portrays Dikê as justice incarnate. Her influence woven into the fabric of archaic Greek life circa 800 to 600 BC. You feel the rhythm of these proceedings, where fairness was crafted through repetition and care. Dispute resolution was a communal affair. Villagers gathered at dawn, their cases presented to elders or trusted mediators in the square, a setting akin to the assemblies of Mycenaean palaces. A typical dispute, say, over a damaged fence began with both parties stating their claims, often with witnesses, their words sworn to Dikê to ensure truth, the elders ruling, guided by custom, and precedent aimed to restore balance, not punish. Much like the restitution practices in Story 10's records, you can imagine a weaver offering to mend a neighbor's cloak as amends, the crowd nodding as harmony is restored. These routines drew on Dikê's moral authority. Hesiod describes her as a guardian against hubris, urging honesty in dealings, a value seen in the cooperative trade of Bronze Age Greece, where pottery exchanges required trust. Elders consulted oral traditions, echoing Mnemosyne's memory from Story 2 to ensure consistency, while scribes sometimes noted rulings on clay, linking to Story 10. Offerings to Dikê barley or oil were placed at small altars, a practice rooted in Minoan votive customs, tying justice to divine favor. You might picture a farmer leaving a handful of grain, his gesture as routine as his daily plow. Challenges persisted. Disputes grew complex as trade expanded, with merchants arguing over weights or debts, issues seen in later archaic market inscriptions. Powerful families could pressure elders, risking bias. A tension echoed in Homeric tales of favoritism. Dikê's ideal of fairness required mediators to navigate emotions, anger over a stolen cow, or grief over a broken betrothal while maintaining impartiality. The process, though repetitive, was never mechanical, each case a small test of the village's unity, much like the communal labor of harvest season. As you watch an elder settle a quarrel with a shared meal, the square's bustle resuming, you ponder, could Dikê's daily routines of justice hold firm as villages grew into cities with ever larger conflicts? You stand now at dusk in the village square, where the glow of torches illuminates a final dispute's resolution, the air heavy with the scent of burning oil. Section to detail Dikê's daily routines here. Her work culminates in a legacy that shaped Greek social order, influencing classical justice systems. Hesiod's works and days casts Dikê as the guardian of moral balance, her mundane resolutions of village disputes laying the groundwork for later legal traditions. You sense the quiet triumph of her influence, where small acts of fairness forged lasting harmony. Each resolved dispute over land, trade, or kinship strengthened communal bonds. Elders, invoking Dikê, settled cases with restitution, like sharing a harvest to mend a feud, a practice rooted in Bronze Age cooperation. As seen in Mycenaean granary records circa 1300 BC, these rulings, sometimes etched by scribes from Story 10, ensured disputes didn't escalate into violence, preserving the village's stability. You can imagine a merchant accepting a ruling to repay a debt, his handshake sealing trust, the square's tension easing as life resumes. Dikê's influence reached beyond villages. Her emphasis on fairness shaped emerging city-states, where assemblies in the agora echoed her communal hearings. The Golden Code circa 500 BC, inscribed on stone, formalized her principles, regulating marriage and property with the same balance. Her moral oversight, urging honesty, influenced trade practices, as seen in standardized weights from archaic markets. Offerings to her shrines, like those at Delphi, tied justice to divine order, a legacy of Minoan votive traditions. Her connection to Themis from Story 9 ensured justice remained a cosmic ideal, grounded in daily life, yet Dikê's system faced limits as city-states grew. Disputes over trade routes or citizenship strained village elders, requiring more formal courts. Bias from powerful clans, a recurring issue in Homeric epics, challenged fairness, testing Dikê's ideals. Despite this, her legacy endured in Athenian juries and legal inscriptions, where her balance shaped democratic ideals. Her story of resolving small conflicts to preserve order mirrors modern mediation, where unsung arbitrators maintain societal Trust through routine. As you leave the square, the torch is dimming. You reflect. How do today's quiet acts of fairness, often unnoticed, uphold the balance of our communities in an increasingly complex world? Prometheus' legacy. Alchemical experiments in medieval workshops. You stand in a dimly lit medieval workshop, where the air is thick with the scent of charcoal and molten lead, and the flicker of a furnace casts shadows on stone walls. It's the heart of the European Middle Ages, circa 1000 CE, and the myth of Prometheus, the titan who stole fire for humanity, as told in Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC, lingers in the alchemical pursuits of scholars and craftsmen. Far from the divine rebellion of earlier stories, Prometheus' legacy here is a quiet inspiration, driving the mundane experiments that sought to transform matter. You hear the soft clink of glass vials, each a step toward unlocking nature's secrets. Prometheus, punished by Zeus for gifting fire, symbolized human ingenuity and defiance. A tale preserved in monastic libraries through translations of Greek texts. Medieval alchemists, blending science and mysticism, saw themselves as heirs to his spark, seeking to transmute base metals into gold or discover the elixir of life. Their workshops, scattered from Toledo to Paris, were cramped spaces filled with bellows, crucibles, and handwritten manuscripts, their tools echoing the forges of the Cyclops in Story 5. You can picture an alchemist, his robe stained with ash, stirring a bubbling mixture, his mind alight with Promethean ambition. The daily work was laborious. Alchemists sourced materials sulfur, mercury, sold from merchants tied to trade routes stretching to the Levant, much like the supply chains of Story 7. Recipes, recorded in Latin codices like the Corpus Hermeticum, demanded precise measurements, their steps as routine as a farmer's sowing. A typical experiment involved heating lead with sulfur, the fumes carefully vented through clay pipes, a technique rooted in Roman metallurgy circa 100 CE. These efforts, documented in monastery records, aimed to mimic nature's transformative power. A nod to Prometheus' gift of knowledge, the myth's influence was subtle but profound. Alchemical texts, such as those by Pseudogebus circa 13th century, invoked Prometheus as a symbol of discovery. His fire mirrored in the furnaces that drove experiments. Monks and lay scholars, working in scriptoria or urban workshops, saw their labor as a divine quest, their failures exploding crucibles or toxic fumes accepted as part of the path. This mirrored the resilience of Greek communities in earlier stories, where persistence shaped outcomes, yet alchemy's secrecy, guarded by cryptic symbols, posed challenges, limiting collaboration and risking charlatanis and as you watch an alchemist adjust his furnace, the glow reflecting Prometheus' spark. You wonder, could these painstaking experiments inspired by a titan's myth yield the breakthroughs they sought, or would they remain elusive? You're now deeper in the medieval workshop, where the air hums with the low roar of a furnace and the faint scratch of quill on parchment. Section 1 introduced Prometheus' legacy in alchemical ambition. Here, the focus shifts to the daily grind of experiments, a meticulous process as routine as a scribe's copying. Inspired by the titan's gift of fire from Hesiod's Theogony, medieval alchemists circa 1000 to 1400 CE pursued transformation through repetitive tasks. Their work a bridge between myth and practical craft. You feel the weight of their labor, each step a quiet echo of Promethean defiance. The alchemist's day was structured. Morning began with preparing materials, mercury from Iberian mines, sulfur from Italian volcanoes, and charcoal from local forests, sourced through trade networks akin to those in Story 7. These were measured with precision, using balances in clay vessels, their weights noted in manuscripts like the Liber Ignium circa 13th century. You can picture an alchemist, his hands blackened, grinding minerals with a mortar. His movements as steady as a miller's. Experiments involved heating mixtures in crucibles. Often for hours, the furnace stoked with bellows, a technique descended from Roman and Byzantine metallurgy. Each test followed a recipe, blending science with mysticism. A common goal was the philosopher's stone, believed to transmute lead into gold, a process rooted in Prometheus' transformative fire. The alchemist observed color changes red to gold or fumes, recording results in coded symbols to guard. Secrets, a practice seen in texts like the Turba Philosophorum. Failures were frequent, mixtures fizzled, crucibles cracked, or fumes sickened the unwary. Yet, these setbacks, documented in monastery archives, drove refinements. Much like the iterative testing of Story 8's Trojan Horse, the Promethean myth fueled perseverance. Alchemists saw their furnaces as fire stolen from the gods, their labor, a quest for divine knowledge. This mindset, preserved in translations of Greek texts by scholars like Albertus Magnus, linked their work to the resilience of earlier Greek myths. Logistical challenges persisted, materials were costly, and trade disruptions, like those during the Crusades, delayed supplies. Workshops, often in monasteries or urban guilds, were cramped with ventilation poor, mirroring the Cyclops forges. In Story 5, you might imagine an alchemist pausing to consult a dog-eared codex, his eyes strained but hopeful. The secrecy of alchemy, while protecting knowledge, limited progress, as sharing results risked exposure to rivals or church scrutiny. As you watch the alchemist stir a glowing crucible, the furnace's heat pulsing, you ponder, could this relentless grind, inspired by a titan spark, unlock nature's secrets? Or would it remain a cycle of fruitless toil? You stand now at the workshop's threshold, where the furnace's dying embers cast a faint glow, and the air carries the lingering scent of scorched metal. Section to detail the grind of alchemical experiments here. Prometheus' legacy culminates in a lasting influence on medieval and modern science, rooted in the myth from Hesiod's Theogony. Though alchemists rarely achieve gold or immortality, their meticulous labor, inspired by the Titan's fire, laid the groundwork for chemistry and scientific inquiry. You sense the quiet triumph of their persistence, a spark that burns beyond. The Middle Ages alchemical experiments, though often fruitless, produced practical knowledge. Distillation, used to purify mercury, led to techniques for alcohol and acids. Recorded in texts like Roger Bacon's Opus Majus circa 1267. Metallurgical insights, honed through countless crucible failures, improved alloy making, seen in medieval armor and tools. These advances, born of Promethean ambition, mirrored the craftsmanship of Story 5's Cyclops, their methods preserved. In guild records, you can imagine an alchemist, his notes stained with sulfur, discovering a new alloy by accident, his failure a step toward progress. The Promethean myth shaped alchemical philosophy. Alchemists saw themselves as stealing divine secrets, their furnaces a metaphor for transformation, a belief echoed in manuscripts like the Emerald Tablet. This mindset spread through translations of Greek and Arabic texts in centers like Toledo, drove experimentation despite church suspicion. Logistical networks, sourcing materials from distant mines, supported this work, their resilience akin to the supply chains of Story 7. Failures, explosions, toxic fumes were documented, refining methods over generations, much like the iterative testing of Story 8. The legacy extended beyond workshops. Alchemical techniques influenced early chemists like Robert Boyle, 17th century, whose experiments built on medieval distillation. The Promethean ideal of defying limits inspired scientific revolutions, seen in the empirical methods of the Enlightenment. Archaeological finds, like alchemical tools in monastery ruins, show the era's blend of mysticism and science, a bridge from myth to modernity. Yet, alchemy's secrecy and frequent failures limited its scope, leaving practitioners isolated, a challenge echoing the Titan's struggles in earlier stories. Prometheus' legacy of pushing boundaries through persistent labor resonates today, where scientists and innovators toil in labs, their small discoveries driving progress. As you leave the workshop, its embers fading, you reflect, how do today's quiet experiments, often unnoticed, carry forward the spark of human ingenuity? In our quest for knowledge, Atlas burden, cartographic influences from myth to medieval maps stand on a windswept cliff, overlooking the Aegean, where the stars above seem to press down with a quiet weight. This is the mythic realm of Atlas, the Titan condemned to bear the heavens, as told in Hesiod's Theogony circa 700 BC. Far from the cosmic battles of the Titanomachy in Story 4, Atlas' legacy inspired the mundane craft of cartography, mapping the earth as he held the sky. You hear the distant crash of waves, their rhythm echoing the patient labor of early mapmakers who drew on his myth to chart the world. In Greek mythology, Atlas was not a cartographer but a symbol of endurance, his punishment for siding with the Titans, tying him to celestial order. His image, holding the cosmos, resonated with early Greek navigators who relied on stars to guide ships. As seen in Minoan trade routes circa 2000 BC, the first maps, scratched on clay or wood, were practical tools for sailors and merchants, their shapes informed by oral traditions of geography. You can picture a Greek sailor, his fingers tracing a star chart, invoking Atlas' name to navigate treacherous waters, his myth a metaphor for mapping the unknown. By the archaic period circa 800, 600 BC, Greek scholars like Anaximander began formalizing cartography. Anaximander's map circa 550 BC, described by later sources, depicted the world as a flat disk, with Greece at its center, surrounded by oceans. This reflected the Greek view of the cosmos, with Atlas' burden symbolizing the heaven's structure. Scribes etched these maps on bronze or parchment, their work as meticulous as the bureaucratic records of Story 10. Archaeological finds, like Babylonian clay maps, suggest early influences, but Atlas' myth gave Greek cartography a divine narrative. Tying earthly exploration to cosmic stability, the process was laborious. Mapmakers relied on travelers' tales and star observations. Much like the celestial tracking of Hyperion in Story 2, they gathered in ports or temples, debating distances and coastlines, their discussions as routine as a council meeting. Materials papyrus. From Egypt, ink from squid was sourced through trade networks, echoing the supply chains of Story 7. These early maps, though crude, guided trade and conquest, their accuracy vital for survival in a world of uncharted seas. Yet, the craft faced challenges. Maps were often incomplete, skewed by myth or bias, and materials were fragile, prone to fading. As you stand on this cliff, imagining Atlas' eternal burden, you wonder, could these early mapmakers, inspired by a Titan's myth, chart a world vast enough to match his cosmic load? You're now in a bustling Greek port, where the scent of tar and salt mingles with the scratch of styluses on papyrus. Section 1 introduced Atlas' mythic influence on early cartography. Here, the focus shifts to the daily grind of mapmaking in the archaic and classical periods circa 804 OOBC, a process as meticulous as the legal records of Story 10. Inspired by Atlas' burden from Hesiod's Theogony, Greek mapmakers translated his cosmic endurance into practical charts for sailors and merchants. You feel the rhythm of their labor, each line drawn a step toward taming the unknown. Mapmakers, often scholars or navigators, worked in ports like Miletus, gathering data from sailors' tales and star observations, a practice tied to Hyperion's celestial role in Story 2. Their tools, papyrus, bronze plates, or wax tablets, required careful preparation, sourced through trade networks akin to those in Story 7. A typical map, like Hecateus' world map circa 500 BC, depicted lands as a disk encircled by Oceanus with Greece central, its rivers and coasts sketched from memory and reports. You can picture a scribe, his fingers stained with ink, plotting Crete's outline, his work guided by Atlas' image of holding the world's order. The process was repetitive. Mapmakers cross-checked accounts, debating distances between ports, or the shape of Anatolia's coast, their discussions echoing the committee deliberations of Story 8. Accuracy depended on star charts, aligned with constellations like Ursa Major, a skill rooted in Minoan navigation circa 2000 BC. Corrections were constant. A sailor's report might shift a river's course, requiring hours of ray drawing. These maps, though simple, guided trade and military campaigns. Their importance mirrored in Mycenaean records of resource routes. You might imagine a merchant consulting a map, his ship laden with amphorae, trusting its lines to reach roads. Safety challenges were plentiful. papyrus tore easily and bronze was costly, limiting production. Inaccurate reports or mythical embellishments like tales of Hyperborean-skewed maps. As seen in later critiques by Herodotus, mapmakers also faced skepticism from traditionalists who relied on oral routes, a tension akin to the resistance to written lore in Story 9. Atlas myth. Preserved in temple libraries, inspired persistence, his burden a reminder of the labor needed to chart the Earth's expanse, much like the alchemical grind of Story 12. As you watch a mapmaker refine his chart, the port's bustle fading into dusk, you ponder, could this painstaking craft, driven by a titan's legacy, keep pace with a world growing ever larger through trade and exploration? You stand now in a medieval scriptorium where the glow of candles illuminates parchment maps, their edges curling with age. Section to detail the craft of Greek cartography here. Atlas legacy from Hesiod's Theogony culminates in medieval mapmaking circa 500 to 1500 CE, blending myth with practical navigation. The Titan's image, bearing the heavens, inspired maps that guided explorers and scholars, shaping a worldview from antiquity to the Middle Ages. You sense the quiet triumph of this enduring craft, its lines connecting ancient Greece to a broader world. Medieval maps, like the Mappa Mundi, evolved from Greek foundations. The Teo maps circa 7th century, depicting the world as a circle divided by seas, echoed Hecate's disk-like maps, with Jerusalem now central. Monks, copying Greek texts in monasteries, preserved Atlas myth, their maps adorned with his image holding a globe, as seen in manuscripts like the Etymology of Isidore of Seville. These maps, drawn on vellum, used ink and pigments from trade routes, their logistics akin to Story 7's supply chains. You can imagine a monk, his quote tracing Asia's edge, his work a nod to Atlas' cosmic burden. The process remained laborious. Mapmakers compiled travelers' accounts, portal and charts, and star observations, refining Greek techniques with Arabic advancements like Ptolemy's grid systems circa 150 CE, rediscovered in Byzantium. Each map required days of drawing, with corrections for new discoveries, such as Viking routes to Iceland. These efforts, recorded in monastery archives, mirrored the bureaucratic precision of Story 10. Atlas myth inspired mapmakers to see their work as a divine task, ordering the earth as he held the heavens, a mindset seen in medieval texts blending science and faith. The legacy shaped exploration. Maps guided pilgrims and crusaders, their accuracy improving trade and conquest, much like Greek maps aided Mycenaean commerce. The Hereford Mappa Mundi circa 1300 reflects this, blending geography with myth, its margins filled with creatures echoing Greek tales of distant lands. Yet, inaccuracies persisted, maps distorted by theology or incomplete data posing risks for navigators, a challenge akin to the alchemical failures of Story 12. Atlas influence, though, endured in Renaissance cartography, where globes bore his name, symbolizing human ambition to chart the unknown. This legacy of meticulous mapping resonates today, where cartographers and geographers continue to order our world through data and technology. As you gaze at a parchment map, its lines fading yet enduring, you reflect, how do today's mapmakers, carrying Atlas' quiet burden, shape our understanding of an ever-expanding world? Mnemosyne's archives, oral histories, and their preservation. You stand in a quiet grove in ancient Greece, where the scent of pine mingles with the soft cadence of a storyteller's chant. It's the archaic period circa 800 to 600 BC, and Mnemosyne, the Titan goddess of memory from Hesiod's Theogony, inspires the preservation of oral histories, a practice as vital as the legal records of Story 10. Unlike the grand myths of earlier stories, her influence lies in the mundane rhythms of recitation, binding communities to their past. You hear the hum of voices, each tale a thread in the fabric of Greek identity. Mnemosyne, mother of the Muses, was revered as the source of memory. Her role in the Golden Age story to ensuring tribal genealogies endured. In a pre-literate world, oral histories, tales of ancestors, gods, and harvests were the archive of culture, recited by bards or elders in village squares or at festivals. These performances, described in Homeric epics, relied on rhythmic chants, their patterns aiding recall, much like the mnemonic devices of Bronze Age Greece circa 1300 BC. You can picture a bard, his lyre strumming softly, recounting a clan's lineage under torchlight, his words preserving what clay tablets could not. The process was deliberate. Storytellers trained for years, memorizing sagas through repetition, their methods rooted in communal gatherings where tales were shared over wine and bread. These stories, from heroic deeds to planting cycles, were practical, guiding everything from disputes as in Story 9 to navigation. Archaeological finds, like Minoan seals depicting ritual performances, suggest storytelling was central to social cohesion. Elders ensured accuracy, correcting bards if a lineage strayed, their authority akin to Themis judges. Offerings oil or figs to Mnemosyne's shrines honored her, tying memory to divine favor. This oral tradition faced challenges. Memory was fallible and tales could shift with each telling, risking distortion. Rival clans might dispute a story's details as seen in Homeric quarrels over honor. Yet, Mnemosyne's legacy, carried by her muses, inspired bards to refine their craft, their chants shaping the epics that later became the Iliad and Odyssey. You might imagine villagers gathered, their faces lit by fire, hanging on a bard's words, their past alive in his voice as you listen to the chant fade, the grove's stillness settling. You wonder, could Mnemosyne's oral archives, so reliant on human memory, preserve a culture's truth as Greece grew more complex? You're now seated among villagers in a moonlit square, where the flicker of torches illuminates a bard, chanting tales of heroes and harvests. Section 1 introduced Mnemosyne's role in preserving oral histories. Here, the focus shifts to the daily craft of recitation, a meticulous process as routine as weaving cloth yet essential to Greek cultural continuity. Inspired by the Titan goddess of memory from Hesiod's Theogony, bards wove stories that sustained community identity in the archaic period circa 800 to 600 BC. You feel the rhythm of their words, each verse a link to the past. Bards, often trained from youth, memorized tales through repetition, their methods honed in communal settings like feasts or festivals. A typical performance recounted a clan's origins or a god's deeds, using rhythmic patterns to aid recall, a technique seen in the oral traditions behind Homeric epics. These recitations, held in squares or groves, served practical purposes, settling disputes as in Story 9, guiding trade routes or teaching planting cycles. You can picture a bard, his voice rising and falling, reciting a lineage while villagers nod, their history alive in his cadence. The process required precision. Elders or other bards listened, correcting errors to ensure accuracy, much like the scribes of Story 10 verified legal records. Stories were structured with refrains, their repetition easing memorization, a practice rooted in Bronze Age rituals, as evidenced by Minoan frescoes depicting communal chants. Offerings to Mnemosyne wine or barley were made at shrines, linking recitation to divine favor, a custom seen in votive deposits at Knossos. Bards also adapted tales to local needs, weaving in details of nearby rivers or ancestors, ensuring relevance while preserving core truths. Challenges were constant. Memory could falter, and rival bards might alter tales to favor their clan, risking distortion as seen in Homeric rivalries. Travel between villages, necessary to share stories, was arduous, with bards relying on hospitality, much like the trade networks of Story 7. The lack of writing in early archaic Greece made Mnemosyne's oral archives the sole repository of history, their fragility a concern as communities grew. You might imagine a bard pausing to recall a verse, his audience waiting, their trust in his memory binding them to their past. As the bard's chant echoes in the square, its rhythm fading into the night, you ponder, could this fragile craft of recitation inspired by Mnemosyne keep a culture's stories intact as Greece embraced writing and change? You stand now at the edge of the village square, where the last notes of a bard's chant linger, and the stars overhead mirror the timeless tales of Mnemosyne. section to detail the craft of recitation. Here, Mnemosyne's legacy culminates in the enduring impact of oral histories, shaping Greek culture into the classical period circa 500 to 400 BC. Hesiod's Theogony casts her as memory's guardian, her influence preserving stories that became the foundation of epic poetry and cultural identity. You sense the quiet triumph of these tales, their preservation a testament to human persistence. Bards' recitations, perfected through years of practice, carried histories of gods, heroes, and harvests, binding villages through shared identity. These tales, like those in the Iliad and Odyssey, were not mere entertainment but practical tools, guiding disputes, story-line, trade, and rituals. As writing emerged, bards' oral archives were transcribed, their rhythms shaping the hexameter of Homeric epics, preserved on papyrus by scribes from Story 10. You can imagine a bard's final performance, his words etched onto clay, ensuring Mnemosyne's stories endured beyond memory. The transition to writing, seen in inscriptions like the Gordon Code circa 500 BC, preserved oral histories but altered their nature. Scribes recorded genealogies and myths, their work mirroring Mycenaean record-keeping circa 1300 BC, but the communal act of recitation faded in some areas. Mnemosyne's legacy lived on in festivals where bards competed, their performances echoing Minoan ritual dances. Her influence also shaped theatre, with playwrights like Aeschylus drawing on oral tales. Their works performed in Athens' Agora, a nod to the communal squares of earlier times. Challenges persisted. Writing risked fixing stories, losing the flexibility of oral adaptation, while some tales were lost as bards aged or villages fell. Yet, Mnemosyne's muses ensured her legacy endured, inspiring poets and historians like Herodotus, whose works built on oral traditions. Archaeological finds like pottery depicting mythic scenes show her stories' reach, tying communities to their past. Her role in preserving memory resonates today, where oral history's family tales, indigenous narratives complement written records, maintaining cultural roots. As you leave the square, the bard's voice fading, you reflect, how do today's efforts to preserve stories, oral or written, keep our connection to the past alive in a rapidly changing world? Oceanus trade routes, maritime logistics in ancient Greece. You stand on a rocky shore of the Aegean, where the salt-laden breeze carries the creak of wooden ships and the shouts of sailors. It's the archaic period circa 800 to 600 BC, and the myth of Oceanus, the titan of rivers and seas from Hesiod's Theogony, inspires the maritime trade networks that sustained ancient Greece. Far from the cosmic roles of Story 2, Oceanus' legacy lies in the mundane logistics of shipping goods, a lifeline for communities as vital as the supply chains of Story 7. You hear the slap of waves against hulls, each vessel a thread in the web of commerce. Oceanus, encircling the world in Greek cosmology, symbolized the seas that connected Greece to distant lands. His influence, though mythic, reflected the practical reality of Bronze Age trade circa 2000 to 1200 BC, where Minoan and Mycenaean ships carried goods across the Mediterranean. Ports like Knossos and Pylos, documented in linear tablets, thrived on maritime exchange, trading olives, wine, and pottery for Egyptian grain or Cypriot copper. You can picture a captain, his eyes scanning the horizon, invoking Oceanus for safe passage as he navigates by stars, a practice tied to Hyperion's celestial role in Story 2. The logistics were intricate. Ships, built from cedar or oak, required constant maintenance, their hulls sealed with pitch to withstand storms. Shipwrights, working in coastal yards, followed designs seen in Minoan frescoes, ensuring vessels could carry heavy amphorae. Crews, often numbering 20, rowed or sailed, their routes planned using coastal landmarks and constellations. Merchants coordinated with local leaders, bartering goods in bustling ports, their deals recorded on clay tablets, much like the bureaucratic records of Story 10. You might imagine a quartermaster tallying jars of oil, his calculations ensuring a village's winter stores. Challenges abounded. Storms could sink ships, and pirates, a constant threat, raided unguarded routes. As noted in Homeric tales, Ports required infrastructure docks, warehouses maintained through communal labor, echoing the cooperative ethos of Story 11. Oceanus mythic rivers flowing without toil, contrasted with the human effort needed to keep trade alive, yet his name was invoked in offerings of wine poured into the sea, a ritual seen in Minoan artifacts. These networks, though mundane, fueled Greece's economy, linking it to the wider world. As you watch a ship unload its cargo, the shore alive with trade, you wonder, could these fragile maritime routes inspired by Oceanus sustain Greece's growing ambitions in a turbulent world? You're now in a bustling port like Miletus, where the air hums with the clatter of amphorae and the shouts of merchants haggling over grain. Section 1 introduced Oceanus' mythic influence on maritime trade. Here, the focus shifts to the daily machinery of logistics, a process as routine as a farmer's harvest yet critical to Greece's survival. Inspired by the Titan of seas from Hesiod's Theogony, archaic Greek sailors and merchants circa 800 to 600 BC navigated complex routes to sustain communities. You feel the rhythm of their labor, each ship's journey a link in Oceanus' vast network. The daily work was relentless. Ships, crafted from oak or cedar, were built in shipyards, their planks joined with mortise and tenon techniques seen in Mycenaean wrecks circa 1300 BC. Maintenance crews scraped barnacles and repaired sails, their tasks as repetitive as the recitations of Story 14. Captains planned routes using stars and coastal landmarks, a skill rooted in Minoan navigation. A typical voyage, say from Crete to Egypt, involved loading amphorae with wine or oil, their quantities tallied on clay tablets, mirroring the bureaucratic precision of Story 10. You can picture a merchant checking his cargo, his fingers tracing, numbers etched in clay, ensuring no jar was misplaced. Coordination was key. Merchants negotiated with port officials, securing docking rights and storage in warehouses. Structures evidenced by archaeological finds at Knossos, trade goods, pottery, textiles. Metals were bartered or sold, their values set by oral agreements, a practice tied to Dikê's fairness in Story 11. Crews, often hired from coastal villages, rode in shifts, their diets of bread and dried fish sustained by supply chains like those in Story 7. Offerings to Oceanus, such as oil poured into the sea, sought divine favor, a ritual seen in Bronze Age votive deposits. Challenges were constant. Storms disrupted schedules, sinking ships, or spoiling goods, a risk noted in Homeric tales of perilous voyages. Pirates lurked on open waters, forcing merchants to travel in convoys, a tactic akin to Mycenaean military escorts. Ports faced overcrowding, and disputes over cargo ownership required elders' mediation. Echoing Story 9's courts, the reliance on oral agreements and star navigation, while effective, was fragile, vulnerable to human error or betrayal. You might imagine a captain squinting at the stars, his crew weary, their trust in Oceanus currents tested by a looming gale dot as you watch a ship sail out. Its hull heavy with cargo, you ponder. Could this intricate system of maritime logistics, guided by a Titan's myth, withstand the growing demands of trade and conflict? You stand now on a quiet dock at dusk, where the last ship unloads its cargo, and the sea reflects the fading light like Oceanus' endless rivers. Section to detail the machinery of maritime trade. Here, the legacy of Oceanus, from Hesiod's Theogony, culminates in the lasting impact of Greek trade networks on the Mediterranean world. These routes, built on mundane logistics, shaped commerce and culture into the classical period circa 500 to 400 BC and beyond. You sense the quiet triumph of their endurance, a testament to human ingenuity under a Titan's mythic inspiration. The trade networks, perfected through centuries, connected Greece to Egypt, Anatolia and beyond, their routes carrying wine, pottery and ideas. Ports like Piraeus, built on Mycenaean foundations, became hubs, their warehouses storing goods recorded on papyrus, a legacy of Story 10's bureaucracy. These routes, guided by star navigation and coastal markers, enabled wealth and cultural exchange as seen in Attic pottery found in Etruscan tombs. You can imagine a merchant sealing a deal with a handshake, his ship laden with amphorae, its journey a thread in Oceanus' vast web. the logistics evolved with time. Ship designs improved, with larger hulls and stronger sails, their construction echoing the craftsmanship of Story 5's Cyclops. Merchants adopted written contracts influenced by Story 11's fairness, reducing disputes over cargo. Navigators refined star charts, building on the celestial knowledge of Story 13's mapmakers, ensuring safer voyages. Offerings to Oceanus persisted in rituals like those at Poseidon's sanctuaries, tying trade to divine favor, a practice seen in archaic votive deposits. These advancements, born of routine, fueled Greece's rise as a maritime power. Seen in Athens' naval dominance, yet challenges remained. Storms and piracy persisted, and competition between city-states sparked trade wars, as noted in Herodotus' accounts. The reliance on oral knowledge in early periods before widespread writing risked errors, much like the oral histories of Story 14. Oceanus' legacy, though, endured in the Mediterranean's trade networks influencing Roman and Byzantine commerce, their ports built on Greek models. The myth of his encircling rivers inspired explorers from Phoenicians to medieval sailors to chart new routes and nod to Atlas cartography in Story 13. This legacy of maritime logistics resonates today, where global supply chains echo the coordination of ancient ports. Oceanus' myth of connecting distant shores reminds us that mundane tasks, loading ships, plotting routes, drive progress. As you watch the dock empty, the sea stretching endlessly, you reflect, how do today's unsung logisticians navigating modern trade's complexities carry forward the legacy of ancient maritime networks?